Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 351 Shenmue City. If it was an ancient tree that was already sitting on the ground, the players would also be amazed, but definitely not as shocked as they were now. The Black Falcon transport helicopters had extremely high carrying capacity. Every 2 helicopters pulled an ancient tree. In the picture, the helicopter representing modern technology and the ancient tree representing mysterious nature were in stark contrast with the divine tree Noxie as the background. There was immediately a sense of cyberpunk and mysticism. As the hook of the transport helicopter fell off, the 3 ancient trees landed on the ground steadily. The ancient war tree's body returned to normal from its hard and petrified state. In the process of standing upright, the wood collided with each other and made a creaking sound. Boom! 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 The ancient war tree walked toward the designated location. Its 30-meter-tall body was steady and powerful, and every step it took caused the earth to tremble. At the same time, the players' hearts also trembled with the trembling of the earth. If these ancient war trees were to step on someone, they could turn them into meat paste. The ancient tree of war was led by the druids to the designated location. Then, it squatted down, and its feet rooted into the ground, feeling the abundant nourishment of the divine tree Noxie. "Elder Ancient Tree, what do you think?" the elite druid asked. The ancient war tree's eyes were clear, and its giant arms were like flowers blooming. "This divine tree is young and energetic. It's using its own natural energy to transform this barren land. But I can sense a trace of panic and uneasiness in Lao Ai's emotions, as if there is something in the Goba that it fears and is ready to move. But no matter what the threat is, I swear to protect the tree of God with my life," the ancient war tree said firmly. When the druids heard this, their expressions all changed. This was the third holy land of the Moon Shadow Council on the Wasteland planet, and it could be said to be the holy land with the brightest future. Now that there was something threatening the divine tree underground, they had to inform Elder Lin of this news as soon as possible. After the ancient tree of knowledge landed on the ground, he walked into the forest with a hunched back. Whether it was his steps or his cheeks that were full of wrinkles, all of them showed that he was the true elder of the ancient tree. After his figure disappeared into the forest, he sat cross-legged in the open area in the center of the forest and began to meditate, communicating with the divine tree. Soon, the forest was emitting a faint blue light. This was the spiritual communication and integration between the ancient tree of knowledge and this new land. The youngest ancient guardian strolled to the edge of the valley where the divine tree was located. This was the limit of the divine tree's protection. In front of him was an endless desert and sand, like an indomitable soldier guarding the border. Immediately after, 2 Black Falcon transport helicopters returned, and one of them slowly landed on the lawn. Then, from the player's perspective, a dark-looking man in a suit jumped out of the helicopter. After Fu alighted from the helicopter, he took out the Vulture's palace and released the spirit of the Druid Sage. Other than the Druid Sages, there were also many beast spirits. "I didn't expect that after my death, I would be lucky enough to see the birth of a third divine tree. This is a valley, the terrain is higher and the view is wide. The environment for the divine tree to grow is much better than Noah's, even better than the Noah divine tree in the dark forest. With the current state of the tree of God, I think I'll be lucky enough to see the force of nature conquer the entire desert." The Druid Sage's soul was also full of emotion towards this miracle tree, and he explored around excitedly. The elite druids were familiar with Forbes as well. After all, Forbes was in charge of the Colosseum, and the Moon Shadow Council was in the Colosseum, so they could be considered brothers. However, when he saw Forbes bring the Druid Sage's soul in a box today, he was amazed and felt that the other party was a little unfamiliar. It was well known that the souls of the Druid Sages could not leave the divine tree. Once they lost the protection of the dense natural energy of the divine tree, they would disintegrate and disappear on their own. The only way to teleport the druids was to make them move with the tree of God. Moros used this method when he traveled thousands of miles to invite the tree of God. But now, the Forbes only took out a bronze box and solved the problem that had plagued the Druids for hundreds of years. How could they not be shocked? After Forbes put down the Druid sage's soul, they went straight to Windhowl Castle to report. "Boss, the ancient tree has been safely transported to the Weeping Valley, and it has also brought back many souls." Link leaned against the balcony and looked at the flourishing divine tree, Noxie. It finally had some of the prosperity that the divine tree of Noya had before. "Druid apprentices, how are the elite druids?" "It's mainly because everyone's clamoring to come," Ah Fu answered from behind Link. "The elders can't make a choice, so we're going to draw lots to decide." After saying that, Fu suddenly reacted and hastily said, "Boss, when we were down there, the elite druids said that the ancient war tree and the Noxie divine tree were communicating. They felt that the divine tree was nervous and afraid. It seemed that there was a threat in the Gobi, and they asked me to pass this on to you." The threat of the Gobi was enough to make the god tree Noxie feel fear. Link seemed to know what it was. "Fu, when you return, tell Penny that we can begin the plan for Shenmue City." Fu was slightly stunned and asked, "So soon?" "The Gobi Desert between Shadu and Weeping Valley has not been completely cleaned up yet. It's fine. I'm just using this opportunity to fish out the things hidden in the Gobi to prevent any future trouble." "All right, I'll report this to the supervisor immediately." After Fu finished, he couldn't help but ask, "Boss, is the painter coming back soon? I've been in the Colosseum and some other places these past few days, and I've occasionally heard Inhumans discussing the painter. He left to do something. Ying Luo should be back soon." Link calculated the distance from the Alan Snow Mountains to the Sand City. It shouldn't take long for him to return. Or perhaps this guy had already returned to Shandu, but he was hiding in the dark and didn't show up. After all, this was a top priority for John. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes and would definitely be extremely cautious. Link looked at the completed Tree of God, Noxie, and said to Fu, "If you have time, arrange for some more Druid sages to come over. I have a feeling that with the number of Inhumans, the Druids training here won't be idle." Fu nodded in agreement. The divine tree, Noxie, was now completely built, and they were only waiting for the Druid of the Noah divine tree to move in. The first stage of Link's base camp, which was centered around the castle in the Crying Valley, was completed successfully. The second stage of the plan was to use the Weeping Valley as a link between the Sand City and the Gobi Desert. On this basis, Shenmue City would be built as the front line of the desert invasion. The focus of the entire Shandu was shifted to the south, turning the uptown of Shandu into a rear supply station. A detailed document had been released a month ago regarding Link's various plans. Director Penny had organized a meeting with the think tank to study it, so he was very familiar with the process of the plan. Fu quickly called Supervisor Penny on the way back in the helicopter. "Manager, the boss's instructions are to activate the Godwood City plan." "All right, I've received it." After the call ended, the Penguin Company began to assign tasks to the 5 major organizations of the Lin Financial Group. Soon, the Lin's Financial Group began to operate. The first was the Security Department of the Slums. While the 5 forces of the Security Council issued ordinary missions, they began to prepare to issue new missions to players who had learned 3 skills, which were level 6: go up the mountains and down to the countryside, build a new home. Just from the title of the mission, there was a hidden meaning. NPCs could roughly tell the strength of players, but they could not see the level, so they could not see the specific strength of players. Therefore, through the learning of skills, the NPCs in charge of teaching skills could clearly understand the strength of the players. If they were stuck at level 6, which was a beginner level of combat power, their combat power and safety when carrying out missions would be guaranteed. After that, Zhang Ming and Xingziu were in charge of other comprehensive business departments, including all kinds of construction materials, equipment, saplings for building houses, engineering equipment, and so on. They also began to issue all kinds of missions for the players to act as bodyguards or transport materials. The food department that Mr. Kong and Quinton were in charge of was in charge of logistics and brought all kinds of supplies to the front line to ensure that the construction period was completed smoothly and orderly. Players were also hired to transport or act as bodyguards for the tasks. The media department was in charge of promoting Link's upright image. Recently, the infiltration of the desert extremists had been obvious and they were ready to make a move. Under such circumstances, the Minister of Economic Affairs of Shandu, member of the Military Council of Shandu, well-known philanthropist and president of the Lin Consortium, Mr. Link, decided to build a new city in the empty Crying Valley in Shandu as a front-line defense against foreign invasion. Once news like this was out, the people in the slums, the nobles in the upper city, and the soldiers all felt a deep sense of respect for Link. As the saying went, the emperor guards the country's gates, and the king dies. Link's actions now had a hidden meaning. The favorability of the tens of millions of citizens in Shandu skyrocketed, and even his reputation reached a peak. When the commanders heard the news, they all laughed awkwardly. This was an open scheme, a business-like nature. Knowing that none of them could spare the energy and effort to build a line of defense at the Sobbing Valley, Link took the initiative to take on the defense task. He paid for it and naturally wanted to build a good reputation. He couldn't let himself suffer any losses. However, there was nothing the commanders could do. It was like a slow death. They could only watch as Link continued to build up his power in the Sand City. Now, the commanders were very regretful. When they had first heard the news of General Alonso's death, stabilizing their army was their top priority. They should have seized some assets as soon as Moro's death was announced. In the end, he only wanted to stabilize his foundation and watched as Moro's huge assets were taken by Link. However, this was something to be discussed later. Who would have thought that the two kings of Shitu would die on the same day, 2 hours apart? The whole of Shitu sprang into action. Even the Newman family donated $500,000 in cash in the name of protecting Shitu, setting off a donation frenzy among the upper city nobles. Within 2 days, they had raised $3 million for Link to build the city. This time, Link laughed. All the industries used to build the city were under his name, and the main labor force was the players. There were basically no expenses, so how did he earn $3 million just by building a city? However, since they were all sincere gifts from the villagers, Link could only accept them with tears in his eyes. But who was Link? He was extremely upright. Was he the kind of person who was greedy for money? It definitely wasn't. He immediately took out the funds and named it the Founding City Award. What was the City Creation Award for? It was specially used to reward people who had contributed to the creation of Divinewood City. When the news was made public, all the players who had received the quest were stunned. Every player could receive the City Creation Prize. Every time they completed a related quest, they would receive a corresponding amount of contribution points. After the completion of the Divinewood City, the funds would be distributed according to the amount of contribution points they had earned. The series of actions made the players in Sand City feel extremely satisfied. The players who had accepted the mission were grinning from ear to ear. They could even earn extra money by doing the mission this time. It was a bloody win. The players who hadn't reached level 6 and couldn't receive the quest were even more anxious. Seeing that others were eating the meat, and they didn't even have the qualifications to drink the soup, how could they not be anxious? All of them were madly doing missions to level up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. At this time, they did not care about the mission level. As long as it was a mission that gave experience, it was fine. They wanted to get to level 6 as soon as possible and do the go to the mountains and the countryside, build a new home. The mission. For a time, the mission completion rate of the Lin's financial group was off the charts. It was less than 10 days after October and they were already close to completing the fourth quarter's KPI in advance. Boss's move is really brilliant. He only drew a big cake and these Inhumans are all mobilized. Not only did the number of players at the front lines increase, but the Inhumans in the city were also working hard to complete their tasks. Even the Lin Financial Group's performance targets have been exceeded. I'd like to call this round godlike KPI. Several people from the think tank gathered together during a meeting inside. At this moment, the penguin, Penny, looked at the bandit who was making tea for them in the distance and couldn't help but say, "No one knows how to control the Inhumans better than boss." The others nodded in agreement. "The supplies in the city are almost ready. We'll start transporting them to the Weeping Valley tomorrow morning. I hope these Inhumans will work hard to ensure their safety," Mr. Kong and the third brother said. Star Constellation, who was standing at the side, had a different opinion. Since boss knows that there are still dangers in the Gobi, but still calls for Inhumans to send materials, I think the focus of this wave is not to build Shenmue City, but to draw out the things under the Gobi. Are you referring to the Desert Earth Dragon? Star Constellation nodded. Ordinary Desert Earth Dragons aren't scary. What's scary is the Earth Dragon King. As long as this thing was not removed, their lifeline from Shadow to Weeping Valley would not be at peace. Only by eliminating the Earth Dragon King would they be able to eradicate the Desert Earth Dragon. The boss was probably planning to use the Inhuman's ability to revive after death to lure the Earth Dragon King out. As for the construction of the Divine Wood City, this should be done in passing. P.S. The next chapter will be around 2 o'clock. Chapter 352 The Earth Dragon King. The next morning, the first batch of players who had reached level 6 and accepted the mission arrived at the mission location at the designated time. Stay Up Late, who had just reached level 6, found their respective class trainers and learned the third skill. However, because they had just received the mission to go up the mountain and to the countryside, they could only wait for the second batch of goods to be delivered. As a small leader of the Kylin Hall, Wind-Chasing Wolf had been arranged to participate in this escort operation. He could act together with the Miracle Guild's Shandu team. Miracle's players in Shandu were quite well off. Since the guild leader Windchaser had given everyone 200 coins at the start of the game, everyone did not have to worry about not having enough to eat. They could put all their energy into completing quests and leveling up. They even saved up money to buy guns much earlier than the others. Later on, some Miracle Guild players from the neighboring guilds arrived in Shandu one after another. However, by then, the players born in Shandu had already established their own advantages, so it was no longer a problem for them to bring in the players who came later. Now, a 20-man team from the Miracle Guild, led by the guild leader, Windchaser, and the core member, King of Leftover, was escorting the supplies to the Weeping Valley. Don't relax on this escort mission. Don't think that this is just a mission to earn money and contribution points. I heard from Kylin Hall's Hall Master Bob that the real danger is on the road, and he told us to pay attention to where we are going. The Miracle Guild's players furrowed their brows in confusion. Pay attention to your feet? Is there anything I need to pay attention to? Zui Feng got close to everyone and whispered, "It's said that there's something evil under the Gobi that will attack the livestock of the caravans. Therefore, there's a high chance that we'll be attacked on the way. Everyone, be on your guard." After hearing Win's words, the players' solemn expressions suddenly became excited. "Guild leader, are you saying that we can start the battle immediately? Battles are not child's play. Don't compare this game with those simple numerical values from before. The battles in Destiny test one's ability to adapt to the situation. Don't panic when we really fight later and listen to my command. I repeat, listen to my command. You're all Miracle's old men, so don't make any stupid mistakes. Guild leader, don't worry, we'll definitely listen to your commands." Although the players said so, Win still wasn't confident. Although the people from the Miracle Guild had bought guns earlier, they were doing missions in the city. There was basically no chance for them to shoot. Now, the slums were like an iron plate, and the security was good. It was a blessing from their ancestors to be able to get a shooting mission. The members of the Miracle Guild were wise enough to keep quiet. After all, this mission involved contribution points. The higher the contribution points, the more the bonus would be divided. Giving other guilds or small groups a reminder would only make them set up defenses in advance and snatch the funds in the prize pool. The first wave of supplies had been prepared beforehand and were now being transported by the convoy. The players were assigned different missions according to the location where they received the mission. The players who received the mission from the transportation department were mainly responsible for clearing the stones on the road that could easily cause the tires of the trucks to burst. The gravel in the gobi was slightly harder. If the wheels of a fully loaded truck rolled over directly, it was easy to get a leak or a flat tire. At this moment, they needed the players at the front to help clear the gravel that would affect the vehicle and move it to the side. By the way, why don't we just build a Gobi desert road from Shadu to Weeping Valley? That way, we can transport goods faster and support faster. The players who were picking up the stones couldn't help but grumble. Compared to the players who were guarding the convoy behind, this mission was even more tiring. It was like planting rice seedlings, and he could not even straighten his back. You don't understand. It's obvious that you don't understand the history of Shandu. More than 20 years ago, the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang had once attacked together. At that time, the command headquarters was set up in Weeping Valley, and the Gobi was the battlefield. One was that the maintenance cost of building a road in the Gobi was too high. Moreover, the wind and sand were strong at night, and the road would soon be buried by sand and stones. Secondly, by building roads, it would be unimpeded for the enemy spies to infiltrate into Shadu. If the enemy army attacked, the Gobi could also be used as a buffer zone. If the roads were built, they could only drive straight in. Third, the Weeping Valley has been abandoned for a long time. There are no facilities on the road except for a few scattered villages, so there is no road built. It wasn't just the grumbling player, but the other players around him also had an expression of realization. But this time, Link has returned to the Castle of Wind in the Weeping Valley and even set up the Druids' base camp there. Now, he's building a city. All of this is sending a signal. A battle between the Sand City and the Machinery Faith is inevitable. The players were instantly excited. The clash between two forces was definitely exciting and would lead to a lot of plots. Most importantly, the players loved to fight and kill. Otherwise, why would they level up, learn skills, and buy equipment? When the two sides fought, the players would have a stage to perform. How could the rewards from completing quests be more comfortable than killing monsters and dropping equipment? There were also many players escorting the convoy. The convoy was basically a kilometer long, and there were several rows of players guarding on both sides. At the end of the convoy were the players who were in charge of the safety of the rear. In a truck, Xingziu was chatting with Yomi happily. It's been a long time, Heavenly King of the Western District. It's only been 3 months, but your hair has grown and your style of dressing is getting more and more pleasing to the eye. Xingziu looked at Hades and found that his originally short hair had grown to his earlobes. He looked valiant and heroic, but at the same time, he had a little more feminine charm. At the same time, the style of his clothes had also changed from men's clothing to bright and colorful clothes. She changed from leather boots to high heels. She was wearing a pair of black sunglasses and had lipstick on her lips. She looked more like a city beauty. He exuded a strong scent of perfume, and one could tell that it was alpaca perfume. Star Constellation's jaw almost dropped from the shock of the netherworld's change, and she sized it up without blinking. With his hands in front of his chest, Huang Chuan glanced at the TV station's vehicles that were in charge of filming and said in a flat tone, "When I was under Moros, my task was to look after the West District for him. Although no one dared to cause trouble, in order to suppress his subordinates, I had to prepare for battle every day. Naturally, I didn't have time to take care of it. Now, I'm going in and out of the TV station every day, managing the newspaper, and responsible for the safety of Nicole and Anna. Being affected by the two of them, I have more time and naturally want to try a different style." Xingziu's eyes widened in disbelief. "I always thought that you didn't like this style, Ying Luo. Netherworld's red lips curved up slightly as she smiled, so there's something you can't predict. Star Constellation looked at the other party and smiled, there are many things I can't predict. For example, I can't predict what the boss is thinking. Yomi glanced at the Inhumans on both sides of the convoy and asked, then, can you calculate why we went through so much trouble to hire thousands of Inhumans to transport the supplies? In her opinion, there was no need to go through so much trouble to transport the supplies. Moreover, the Lin Financial Group had enough people, so there was no need to spend money to hire Inhumans. In her opinion, this was completely unnecessary. However, Gloria did not doubt Link's orders. She just felt that she could not figure it out. It just so happened that she was on a mission with Xingziu today. When she met her old colleague, Yomi also asked her the question that had been bothering her. Xingziu smiled slightly and didn't keep him in suspense, directly saying, you should have heard of the legend of the Gobi, right? The boss has basically solved the problem of the wild beasts in the Gobi. However, there is still another problem, the desert earth dragon, Paishu. So many resources and Inhumans, making such a big commotion, are they preparing to fish out the earth dragon king? Yomi immediately understood Link's intentions. Recently, there had not been any news of wild beasts in the Gobi. However, desert earth dragons were usually buried deep underground. In addition, they were annelids, which made it difficult to detect them with thermal infrared rays or sound equipment. Cleaning up had always been a big problem. In addition, there was also the legendary Earth Dragon King that had lived for many years, which made the people who came to the Gobi on edge for many years. Then, when the Earth Dragon King appears later, should we also take action? Boss's orders. Star Constellation shook her head. Unless the core goods are in danger, we won't take action at any other time. The core goods of this wave were the saplings in the truck container where Star Constellation and Netherworld were located. These saplings were nourished by the Tree of God. By injecting natural energy, druids could make these saplings grow into big trees in an instant. They could even use natural energy to guide the direction of their growth, directly forming corresponding houses and buildings. This was the most crucial material for the construction of the Divine Wood City, and after ordinary trees were infused with natural energy, they would grow uncontrollably without any means of shaping. Yomi glanced out of the window and sighed, I hope the Earth Dragon King will appear today. After the establishment of Shenmue City, the machinery faith will be the next target. I might even have the chance to see the top-tier mechanical masterpiece running in the Gale Desert in my life, the Machinery City. As soon as Yomi's voice fell, Xingziu felt a regular vibration coming from the ground. As an astrologer with strong perception, Star Constellation's expression immediately turned serious. You're right. You've been secretly studying Feng Shui recently, haven't you? Yomi rolled her eyes at Xingziu and didn't answer. Instead, she turned her head and stared at the Inhumans curiously, wanting to see how they fought. The ground shook slightly, and all the vehicles began to slow down and stop under the command. The players on both sides of the convoy also felt the earth hum and rise, and they looked around in a daze. Wind immediately turned the submachine gun on his back and held it with both hands. Be alert, something is coming out. The Miracle Guild's players immediately took out their pistols and opened the safety. They were highly focused, and their eyes kept scanning the ground, hoping to find any unusual movement. The players on the left, right, and in the parking lot all stopped in their tracks. The unusual movement served as a reminder to them. However, the players who were clearing the stones at the front were already dizzy. Not to mention an earthquake, he might not even be able to stand up straight. F***ck, why is this rock jumping around on the spot? A player was about to lower his head to pick up the stone, but he saw the stone on the ground rise and fall as if it was jumping on its own. When the other players heard this, they glanced around and were about to say that their eyes were playing tricks on them. However, when they turned around, they saw a cobblestone on the ground that had been eroded by the wind and sand. It was indeed shaking on the ground, and it would even shake up and down occasionally. It's true. What's going on? The player could not help but squat down like a child observing an ant hole. He lowered his head and stuck out his butt, wishing he could stick his head directly to the ground. The surrounding players threw away the stones in their hands and tilted their heads to look in the direction of this player. They did see the movement of the gobi. However, it was a little awkward. In the next second, the rumbling gobi suddenly split open, and a desert earth dragon emerged from the ground. Its round mouth with 3 circles of sharp teeth opened and grabbed the head of the player who was squatting on the ground looking at stones. Then, it began to shake wildly. The players were dumbfounded. This was a delivery mission. What the hell was this disgusting thing that suddenly appeared in the desert? It had a meaty body that was 50 centimeters wide and 2 meters long. The wriggling rings on its surface were clearly visible, and it looked like an earthworm that was countless times larger. However, unlike earthworms, it had a round, open mouth part that forcefully grabbed the player's head. The range and frequency of its movements were unusually high, catching the player off guard. A moment later, the desert earth dragon tore off the player's head. Half of his spine, which had been pulled out by the tremendous force, was clearly visible, along with blood. His body was also twisted and deformed because of his spine being pulled out. Blood splattered all over the ground, and some of the players who were close could even feel the warm smell of blood on their faces. The bloody scene was so real that it was terrifying. Many players suddenly felt their stomachs turn, and they were so nauseated that they wanted to vomit. The players who were a little further away had their minds blank as they stood in place, dumbfounded. They forgot to take out their guns and even forgot to escape. Finally, the first player started to turn around and run. The second and third players quickly reacted. The terrifying underground creatures, the brutal hunting scene, and the real bloody scene crushed the players' brains, making them lose even the slightest ability to resist. The players at the front began to scatter, but more desert earth dragons rushed out of the ground like a fountain. It bit the players' arms or legs and tore them apart with great force. In an instant, many players' broken limbs and remains appeared in the desert. Many desert earth dragons also appeared from the side, suddenly leaping out from under their feet to attack the players. Wind was already level 12, so he reacted the fastest and shouted, "Pay attention to your feet and stay away from the shaking." Day. The bullet was shot out like water, and the desert earth dragon was quickly hit. After its ring-shaped body was hit, it spewed out a nauseating yellow pus. With the addition of Wind Chaser's aura, the Miracle Guild players panicked for a short time and began to shoot at the desert earth dragon. The gunshots and the atmosphere infected many players. While they were running, they remembered that they had guns and turned back to fight. Star Constellation and Yellow Spring turned their heads and looked at the battle between the Outlanders through the left and right windows. Although they were flustered at the start, they adjusted quickly and quickly organized an effective counterattack. Star Constellation commented honestly. At this moment, the two of them changed their expressions. This was because they felt a strong vibration. Then, the scenery outside the car that was parked in the Goba seemed to be slowly changing. This was the feeling of the car being tilted. Even the air buzzed, and the sound waves spread layer by layer. The two of them saw that the flat desert not far away was now like a small hill. It was obvious that the earthquake was not caused by an ordinary desert earth dragon. The Earth Dragon King said, "It's here. P.S. I have to go out during the day. I'll update today and work hard on writing when Wanjun comes back." Chapter 353 Sealing the Earth Dragon King. There was no nervousness on Xing Xiu's face. Instead, she pursed her lips and smiled, asking, "Hey, Yomi, are you nervous?" However, Yomi took out a camera from her bag and started taking pictures of the outside while muttering, "This is a good photo for the newspaper's headlines. We have to take more photos of this rustling." In the past 3 months, he had been working with 2 women who were full of enthusiasm for work, so he couldn't help but be influenced by them. Star Constellation saw the huge change in Huang Quan's appearance, but she couldn't help but be shocked when she saw the huge change in her personality. Was this still the cold netherworld who guarded the western district? The sound of the earth rumbling did not decrease but increased instead. The mound continued to rise, bringing a large area of land to rise, as if it was about to create a mountain. Gravel rolled down from the slope, and the ground could be clearly felt from the truck. The surrounding players finally organized an effective counterattack and fired at the Desert Earth Dragon. Although this thing was effective when shot with bullets, the Desert Earth Dragon had a strong ability to dig underground. After being injured, it would retreat underground and swim in the goba soil, looking for the next opportunity to attack, making it impossible to guard against. In addition to the players above level 6, the first batch of missions also absorbed many mutated human players. The mission did not have any level requirements for the mutated human players. As long as they were mutated humans, they could directly participate in the mission. This decision had caused a lot of controversy before. After all, Lin Ke had publicly stated that the mutants were trash. In the end, the mutants could participate in the mission without any tests or restrictions. He was not keeping his word. He was slapping himself in the face. However, now that they were being attacked by the Desert Earth Dragon, it was clear who was swimming naked. The abilities of the mutated humans were indeed powerful in the early stages. They were much stronger than punch, hidden weapon throw, and natural rage. However, there was a downside to this ability. It was difficult to hit the target. Many of the mutated human players had never experienced a real battle before. When they saw the Desert Earth Dragon and such a terrifying and bloody scene, they panicked and used their skills as if they were free. There were only a handful of people who could successfully hit a monster with a skill. There were many skills that missed, and even missing was considered light. Some of them simply closed their eyes and released the arrows randomly. Not only did they not hurt the monsters, but they even injured their own people. It was truly to protect the enemy and attack the teammates. What made everyone even more dumbfounded was that after releasing 2 or 3 skills in a panic, the mutated human simply became a spectator because his energy was exhausted. He could not continue to fight. Suddenly, on the battlefield, the mutated humans became a group of people who were disliked by everyone. Not only was he unable to contribute, but he was also a hindrance to them. Now, he was running around the battlefield like a headless fly, not knowing what he was doing. Many of them were caught by the Desert Earth Dragons while they were running around, finally giving the players the chance to shoot. One by one, the Desert Earth Dragons fell. Their straight, round bodies lost their strength and fell to the ground. A disgusting, yellow, stinky liquid flowed out of its mouth part. It was nauseating. The players finally understood why Link had requested for the mutants to be brought along. It was clear that they wanted to see the mutated humans' garbage with their own eyes. He was an amateur in fighting outside, but an expert in fighting inside. He didn't hit the enemy, but it was very exciting to hit his own people, one hit. The players recalled what Link had said in front of the St. Maria's Cathedral and seemed to have a deeper understanding. This time, Link was on the 5th floor. Link, I'm sorry. Although the desert earthworms were strange and tricky, they could not fight against the numerous players. Soon, the desert earthworms, which looked like small snakes on Medusa's head, were all on the verge of death. The players participated in killing the Desert Earth Dragon, and each of them received a lot of experience according to the percentage of damage dealt. Some of the more courageous players rushed to the side of the Desert Earth Dragon's corpse and quickly searched for any loot. The Miracle Guild players were prepared in advance. Under the calm command of Wind, everyone received a lot of experience. When the other pub players saw this, they couldn't help but look over and sigh in their hearts. As expected of the elite players of China's top 10 guilds, their combat power was amazing. With only a configuration of 20 people, under the command of Wind Chasing Wolf and King Gozheng, they actually killed 5 Desert Earth Dragons. Wind-chasing wolf glanced at the desert earth dragon's body and didn't rush to order people to pick it up. After all, it was their spoils of war. Even if others came, they wouldn't be able to pick it up. The battle was not over yet. Through the gaps between the carriages, Wind-chasing wolf saw a small hill not far away, which was like a beating heart that wanted to burst out of the chest. Don't worry about the loot. We must be in big trouble, hee. Wind waved his hand, and the people of Miracle Guild followed through the convoy to the other side. At this moment, the rise and fall of the hill was getting bigger and bigger, and the waves from the ground could be clearly felt. The originally solid ground was now like the sea, and waves could be felt. Zui Feng looked at the terrifying scene in front of him with mixed feelings. Just an ordinary level 10 desert earth dragon was enough to give the players a hard time. Now, it was clear that the boss was about to appear. Most of the players present had never participated in a real battle before. Just now, Wind-chasing wolf had only glanced a few times and found that the players' combat quality was poor. He had started shooting crazily after staring at one. Moreover, the desert earth dragon was dead, and he had wasted half a magazine of bullets. At this level, it would be very difficult for them to fight a boss. Although there were thousands of players involved in the first wave of transportation, they were all only level 6. They couldn't possibly rush up and attack the behemoth that had yet to show its face, right? Even the desert earth dragon, the boss minion, was already struggling to fight it. If the boss were to spit, it would probably kill a group of them. Boom! After many struggles, the raised mound finally exploded. The players could even see the sound waves in the air from the explosion. Immediately after, the players were covered by a thick shadow. Half of the Earth Dragon King's body emerged from the ground. It was 30 to 40 meters tall, and its 4 to 5 meter thick ring-shaped body had countless bristles used to loosen the soil. There were more than a dozen layers of sharp teeth on its huge mouth, which was daunting. All the players present were shocked by the Earth Dragon King's size. They stood in a daze on the spot with their mouths wide open, their minds shaken. Wind-chasing wolf immediately used Detect on the Earth Dragon King, and his heart sank. Name, Earth Dragon King. Race, Annelids. Level, Unknown, Leader. Identity, Lord of the Earth Dragon. HP, Unknown. Energy, Unknown. Evaluation, Face death with a smile, Ollie will give it to you. A song cool for myself. Wind-chasing wolf couldn't help laughing at himself. If he couldn't even detect their levels, it meant that the level gap was too big. However, just the fact that it was a commander tier monster and had such a huge body was enough to make all the players present despair. The Miracle Guild players behind Wind Chaser also checked the Earth Dragon King's information, but they also found unknown. This was ridiculous. They were just a bunch of level 6 kids. An E-class escort mission actually turned out to be a leader tier boss. How could they play? At that moment, a message popped up on the player system interface. During the E-level mission transport of supplies, an uncontrollable factor that affects the mission has appeared, and the mission conditions have been temporarily changed. New mission requirements: please survive the attack of the Earth Dragon King. After completing the mission reward will be doubled. After Zui Feng received the mission, his expression suddenly changed. His body stiffened as he asked, "You guys bought equipment insurance, right?" The Miracle Guild's elite players also received a new mission prompt and immediately understood Wind's meaning. Guild leader, we'll buy them all. Then don't just stand there, this is a double reward. As soon as Wind-chasing wolf's words fell, the players of Miracle immediately turned around and ran in the opposite direction through the gap between the carriages. The Earth Dragon King let out a roar towards the sky. The ear-piercing sound of the roar echoed in the sky. The players suddenly felt as if their heads had been split in half. Their heads were splitting, and they began to run around aimlessly and uncontrollably. The system began to pop up with all sorts of notifications. You have been affected by the Earth Dragon King's mind shriek. You have entered an uncontrollable state of chaos for 15 seconds. You have been affected by the Earth Dragon King's psychic scream. All attributes have been reduced by 80% for 5 minutes. The players who stood near the Earth Dragon King were all affected by the confusion and reduced attributes. The fact that the quest had changed from transporting goods to surviving was enough to make the players feel disheartened. In the end, before they could escape, they fell for the Earth Dragon King's trap. The players behind the convoy or those who had run past in advance were only affected by the attribute reduction and not the chaos status effect. Zui Feng's face turned pale. Players did not have much health points without adding endurance. Now that they had lost 80% of their health points, they were basically left with only a thin layer of health. Whether they were touched by the Earth Dragon King or the Desert Earth Dragon, they would basically be killed instantly. Wind Chasing Wolf was now level 13, and his health was only 120 points with the equipment bonus. This wave of abnormal status reduction directly cut his health to 24 points. Even he was in such a state, let alone these level 6 players. Their HP was basically reduced to around 10 points. Run, quickly run! Zui Feng immediately shouted. Just dodging the Earth Dragon King's attacks was already difficult enough, and now that he was under an abnormal status, the difficulty of this mission was doubled. After the Earth Dragon King let out a long roar, it suddenly plunged toward the nearest player. The densely packed sharp broken teeth in the mouth part were like a meat grinder that sent chills down one's spine. The players who were close to the Dragon King did not even have time to run away before they were enveloped by the Dragon King's mouth, which was 4 to 5 meters in diameter. With a loud crash, the Dragon King swallowed the players and dived into the ground as if it was diving. Star Constellation and Yellow Spring looked at the tragic scene outside, and their expressions were a little stiff. Oh my god, I thought that with our strength, we would be more than enough to take care of the Earth Dragon King. It seems like I've been overthinking this time. It's already a feat to be able to trap this fellow. Netherworld's camera was still clicking. She had taken many wonderful photos while the Earth Dragon King had appeared. Now that the Earth Dragon King had returned to the ground, Netherworld put away the camera, turned around, and said, "This guy's size is beyond my ability. It's almost noon, so I can only use 80% of my power. I can only control it for 10 seconds at most." Xing Xiu frowned slightly, shook the sleeves on her wrist, and counted with her fingers. 10 seconds should be enough to set up a Big Dipper suppression formation. However, we'll have to think of another way to eliminate this guy. Just as the two were conversing, the car shook violently. In the next second, the Earth Dragon King rushed out of the ground again. One of the large trucks of the convoy was directly flipped over, and the carriage was broken in two. Rocks, dust, and huge waves were raised, and all the surrounding players were sent flying. Just as the players were fleeing in all directions, two figures suddenly jumped out of the truck. As an ice-type mutant, Netherworld quickly created an ice path on the top of the container with his palm facing the ground. He quickly approached the Earth Dragon King on the ice. The Earth Dragon King immediately felt a powerful force approaching it, and its bloody mouth with jagged teeth wanted to swallow the Netherworld in one bite. At this moment, Yomi conjured a trail of ice with her hands and ran away from the truck. The Earth Dragon King's body pressed against the truck container, and instantly, it let out a sound of metal twisting. The steel container was flattened, and it went straight to the Yellow Spring. The players suddenly noticed that a powerful ice-type mutant was holding the Earth Dragon King back. They all stopped and looked at the battlefield. Even Wind Chaser and Miracle's members stopped in their tracks to watch the battle. This Wan Wan is the person in charge of the news industry in the Lin Financial Group's media department, Netherworld. He's one of the 4 Heavenly Kings under Moros, the Heavenly King of the West District. Zui Feng exposed Huang Quan's identity. Yomi glanced at Xing Xiu, who was standing on the stars in the sky and following closely behind the Earth Dragon King. The two of them quickly exchanged glances. In the next second, Yomi stopped and landed in the desert. She crouched down and placed her palms on the ground. Ice-sealed tomb. Buzz. In an instant, a stream of frosty cold air gushed out. The huge Earth Dragon King and the surrounding Gobi were all wrapped in solid ice. The Earth Dragon King had turned into a crystal-clear, magnificent ice sculpture that was dozens of meters tall. Under the bright noon sun, it shone with a dazzling light that was no less than a diamond. Star Constellation, who was following closely behind, immediately took out 8 pieces of plates and accurately placed them in all directions. Big Dipper suppression, rise. 8 golden pillars shot out from the 8 discs with the Big Dipper pattern. The golden pillars were connected by light, forming a ceiling suppression array. Crack! The hard ice let out a crisp sound, and in the next second, the ice that covered the Earth Dragon King's body shattered into ice crystal powder. Yomi's face was pale, and she staggered slightly. Creating an ice sculpture that was dozens of meters tall and sealed, the Earth Dragon King had exhausted her energy. The Earth Dragon King was trapped by the Big Dipper suppression formation. It let out a maniacal cry and twisted its body in an attempt to escape. However, when his body came into contact with the golden light, he was immediately burned and emitted a wisp of green smoke. A black burn mark was clearly left on his body. When the players saw that the terrifying Earth Dragon King that had been wreaking havoc was subdued, they were stunned for a moment, before immediately bursting into intense cheers. These 2 NPCs were really awesome, subduing the Earth Dragon King in a short time. Star Constellation walked to Huang Quan's side and heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like we've succeeded. Just as he finished speaking, the Earth Dragon King's body began to wriggle, as if it was accumulating something. Star Constellation's expression changed, and she suddenly had a bad feeling. Pucci! The Earth Dragon King suddenly spat out a cloud of green poisonous mist. The poisonous mist was extremely corrosive. The golden light of the Big Dipper suppression formation was visibly corroded by the poisonous mist and then damaged. The Earth Dragon King struggled slightly, and the entire suppression formation collapsed completely. The players were still celebrating, and some of the more daring players even wanted to get a closer look at the Earth Dragon King. However, all the players were dumbfounded when they saw this. The misty Earth Dragon King had broken the suppression formation. Star Constellation and Yellow Spring's expressions both collapsed, and their hearts instantly sank to the bottom. This time, it's finished. P.S. Recommending my friend's new book Doomsday Puzzle Game. It's a veteran author. In Wanjun's eyes, this book is quite good. The creative content is also very interesting. The most important thing is that the cover is very straight. You guys go and take a look at the cover. If you don't add it to your collection, I'll admit defeat. Chapter 354 King Kong's first show in front of the Inhumans, October 12. They had never expected the Earth Dragon King to be able to spit out corrosive poisonous mist. The poisonous fog was so strong that it could even corrode the golden light that was suppressing the formation. Its effect was extremely overbearing. The freed Earth Dragon King released its anger without restraint. Its body wriggled layer by layer, and once again, it spat out a thick poisonous mist from its mouth. The poisonous mist splashed on the ground and immediately reacted with the soil, causing black smoke to rise. The soil and rocks were instantly corroded into black, and their surfaces began to foam as they slowly disintegrated. When players were hit by the poisonous mist, the system detected that there was damage that exceeded the limit of pain and immediately reduced the pain to the minimum. However, the players had already been hit by the Earth Dragon King's Spirit Shriek, and their attributes had been reduced by 80%. They were killed almost instantly the moment the poisonous fog took effect. The bodies on the ground were quickly corroded, and black bubbles emerged. A moment later, even the bones had turned into slag, turning into a pool of black water with the soil and rocks, indistinguishable. The players who saw this scene felt a chill run down their spines, and they turned around and ran without saying anything. He had thought that the 2 experts from the Lin family financial group would be able to stop the Earth Dragon God's rampage, but it seemed like that was not going to happen. Netherworld patted Xingziu's shoulder lightly, his palm facing the ground. Cold air spurted out of his palm and condensed into an ice path, which Netherworld quickly pulled away. Just now, the ice-sealed Earth Dragon King had consumed a lot of Netherworld's energy, and she no longer had any extra energy to trap such a huge creature. Star Constellation's fingers drew quickly in the air, and a star map of the 12 zodiac stars appeared out of thin air in a flash. It expanded rapidly as it rotated, as if it contained the power of the stars and the universe, and smashed straight at the head of the Earth Dragon King. Sensing danger, the Earth Dragon King's body slammed into the ground. Its mouth part was sealed, and its broken teeth were exposed, making it an excellent digging tool. In an instant, it burrowed into the ground and disappeared without a trace. The 12 zodiac stars' chart hit the ground with a loud boom, sending dust and dirt flying. The ground of the desert was smashed into a 10-centimeter deep star map mark with a diameter of 100 meters. Star Constellation gritted her teeth in anger. If it was any other enemy, he would have suppressed them long ago. It was a pity that he had encountered an Earth Dragon King that could drill into the ground. Many of his star maps and arrays had lost their binding effects. The Earth Dragon King's ability completely suppressed him, and the only one who could restrict the Earth Dragon King, Netherworld, was now out of energy and could no longer control the huge creature in front of him. When the power of the 12 zodiac star map disappeared, the Earth Dragon King suddenly emerged from the ground and started attacking the players and vehicles, venting his anger. Looking at the Earth Dragon King's unbridled behavior, Star Constellation felt a wave of despair. Their boss, Link, had arranged for him and Netherworld to carry out a mission. Now that the Earth Dragon King had appeared, the two of them had tried all sorts of methods but were still unable to do anything. No one could restrain the Earth Dragon King. Thousands of players were destroyed, and even the convoy was destroyed. Star Constellation stood helplessly on the spot as she watched the Earth Dragon King wreaking havoc. Her gaze went from helplessness, despair, hesitation, and finally to determination. Since he was the general commander and person in charge of this transportation, he had to bear the corresponding responsibility. Star Constellation folded her arms in front of her chest, and her daist robe fluttered without any wind. He wanted to activate the great formation of collapsing dead stars to connect his fate with the Earth Dragon King. Then, he would use the method of self-destruction to completely destroy the Earth Dragon King. Yomi's expression changed when she saw Xingziu's hand gesture. She quickly returned to Xingziu's side. "Are you crazy? You'll die if you do this." Star Constellation formed a seal while searching for the fate of the Earth Dragon King. "When I woke up this morning, I did a divination and it said that I'm not going to die today. Even if we use the collapsing dead star formation, boss should have a way." As soon as he finished speaking, Star Constellation suddenly felt a thread of fate between her and the Earth Dragon King. In the next second, a thin thread was pulled out of his heart, emitting dark blue starlight. A thin red line also shot out from the Earth Dragon King's body. The two thin threads seemed to be pulled and gradually grew closer to each other. Once the two threads were tied together, their fates would also be tied together, and they would truly live and die together. The Earth Dragon King did not feel anything at all. At this moment, it was immersed in the joy of hunting down the players. These little things would break with a touch, and it was really fun. The entire Gobi Desert had become the playground of the Earth Dragon King. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as everyone was in despair, a black Falcon transport helicopter suddenly appeared in the sky. "Are you ready to show your face to the Inhumans?" Link asked King Kong as he sat in the back seat of the Black Falcon transport helicopter. "Master, do you want him dead or alive?" King Kong nodded his head with certainty. Link raised an eyebrow. "You don't even ask if I can win? Even Xingziu and Hades couldn't defeat them, yet you're so confident." Vajra received the Buddha seal and nodded slightly. "Monks don't lie. If you can beat them, then you can. If you can't, then you can't." Boss brought tons of metal this time, and the Earth Dragon King's evil and chaotic nature is naturally restrained by Buddhism. It's a piece of cake to deal with it. Link smiled and patted King Kong's shoulder. Good. Then let me see your improved strength. Link stepped forward and ordered the pilot, release it now. The pod under the Black Hawk transport helicopter opened, and inside was a huge square metal. As the clamp was released, the metal cube free fell from hundreds of meters in the air. King Kong shouted and jumped out of the helicopter. He maintained a position with very little wind resistance and fell quickly. The first thing Netherworld did when he saw the Black Falcon transport helicopter was to press down on Constellation's arm, indicating that he did not need to connect to fate. The fleeing players did not have time to look up at the sky, but the terrible sonic boom in the next second made them notice something in the sky. Bang! Bang! King Kong broke through the sound barrier, and a layer of white protective shield burst out around his body. The silver metal gradually turned red from the intense friction. The falling cube of metal was also roasted red. The players opened their mouths in shock, not understanding what had just happened. The Vajra quickly caught up to the metal cube and absorbed the metal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its body grew rapidly. The Earth Dragon King was still wreaking havoc on the ground, as if the strange phenomenon in the sky had nothing to do with him. The Vajra and the metal cube had completely fused. Its body was 6 to 7 meters tall, like the legendary ancient giant ape on the Skeleton Island. At this moment, King Kong's thumb and middle finger were in the shape of a flower-picking hand, and his other palm was slowly pushing out. The star constellation on the ground couldn't help but swallow her saliva and muttered, "Hades, have you ever heard of a palm technique that descends from the sky?" Yomi was flabbergasted. All her attention was focused on King Kong, and she had no time to answer Xingziu's question. The Vajra's palm was red, and a heavy pressure was emitted from the palm. The players on the ground suddenly felt a gust of wind above their heads, accompanied by a pressure. It was as if they were carrying a heavy burden on their shoulders. The Earth Dragon King, which had been killing players, finally felt the threat from the sky. It opened its mouth and spat out a cloud of poisonous mist. However, in the next second, the poisonous mist that gushed out was instantly dispelled completely. The Earth Dragon King's upright body seemed to have suffered an invisible blow and fell to the ground with a loud bang, twisting its body with difficulty. The 6 to 7 meter tall King Kong in the air stretched out a palm. Just its aura alone was enough to suppress the 30 to 40 meter long Earth Dragon King, making him unable to move. King Kong's speed became faster and faster, like a supersonic missile, it smashed into the ground. Everyone felt the earth rumble, and then a dazzling golden light flashed past their eyes, blurring their vision. When the golden light faded, the players found that the ground where the Earth Dragon King was had caved in by a full 30 to 40 centimeters. The outline of the sunken land was that of a huge handprint. The Earth Dragon King wrapped around King Kong and opened its mouth, which was full of broken teeth, wanting to tear King Kong apart like a piece of scrap metal. At this time, King Kong was stepping on the Earth Dragon King's body, and his two hands firmly opened the Earth Dragon King's mouth part, not giving it a chance to strangle him. The heat from his burning arm was still there. Under the scorching sun, his firm muscles outlined clear lines, looking full of power and explosive. Through King Kong's combat goggles, he could clearly see the Earth Dragon King's soaring combat power. The players in the distance all stopped in their tracks, completely stunned by the scene before them. This Jianjia is the gorilla captain. What is this gorilla made of metal? What terrifying strength! Even with such a huge difference in size, he can still fight the Earth Dragon King. Only Wind-Chasing Wolf was happy and immediately explained to the guild members, "This is the guild master's pet King Kong." The next second, Wind-Chasing Wolf murmured to himself, his eyes suddenly awakening, "If this is the president's pet, then the one on the helicopter is Ying Ying." Wind looked up at the helicopter hovering in the sky. He had a strong feeling that Link was on the plane. If Link came personally, the Earth Dragon King would be a piece of cake. The Earth Dragon King saw that he was not able to defeat the Dragon King after a long time of wrestling, so his body began to squirm slowly. His blood vessel-like body segment began to squirm again, as if it was pushing something upward. Not far away, Zui Feng saw this and immediately shouted, "Be careful, it's going to spew corrosive poisonous mist from its mouth." King Kong, who opened the Earth Dragon King's mouth with both hands, also smelled a strong pungent smell at this moment. At this moment, the Earth Dragon King's mouthpart's strength increased by another notch. It was obvious that it did not want the King Kong to escape successfully, and wanted to use the strong corrosive poisonous fog to directly corrode the King Kong into dregs. "Today, I'll take care of you, you evil creature that wreaks havoc in all directions." King Kong closed his eyes, as if he could see the past few decades of merchants being attacked by the desert earth dragons. Every year, there were people who died in the mouth of the desert earth dragons, and this Earth Dragon King was the biggest culprit who wreaked havoc in this place. The dismembered and eaten corpses of the victims were scattered in the Gobi Desert. They disappeared under the dust with the whistling cold wind at night and were exposed to the wilderness. Thinking of this, Vajra's Buddha heart that was still as water could not help but ignite a fire of anger. All the fire gathered above his head and condensed into a flame hotter than the blazing sun. The second move of the Buddha's palm, the golden-crowned Buddhist lamp. The fire of the angry Buddha on King Kong's head spread out in an instant. The poisonous mist spurted out from the Earth Dragon King's mouth at the same time. For a moment, the flames of the angry Buddha and the poisonous mist collided and surged in the Earth Dragon King's mouth. The Earth Dragon King's poisonous mist corroded everything, while the Vajra Dharma was profound, and the fire of the golden-crowned Buddhist lamp was extremely pure. For a moment, the two collided and were evenly matched, and the situation was in a stalemate. The Buddha's lamp's flame resisted the poisonous mist. Wind-chasing Wolf was the first to react and he couldn't help but shout, "Shoot! Now!" The Miracle Guild's players heard the guild master's order and began to fire. The other players also gradually reacted and joined in the killing of the Earth Dragon King's army. This was a commander-tier boss. According to the system settings, the reward would be given according to the contribution points. As long as the damage was slightly higher, the reward would be higher than the others. The bullets landed on the Earth Dragon King's body, but it was like a clay ox entering the sea, there were no ripples. The player's vision interface showed that when the bullet was shot, the damage that popped up was basically zero, and only one damage occasionally appeared. This damage was not even considered a scrape. The poisonous mist ended, and the golden Buddha's lamp on King Kong's head dimmed and gradually extinguished. The confrontation between the two powers was actually a tie. This Earth Dragon King's strength is still beyond my imagination. I thought 10,000 combat power was the best I could do, but I didn't expect it to be 15,000. King Kong's face was a little gloomy. He had wanted to finish the job with warm wine to kill Huaxiang, but now the battle was in a state of anxiety. If she didn't show her true strength now, she might not be able to kill this beast before Link landed in the desert. "I was planning to give you a surprise later, but it seems like I can't hide this anymore." The Vajra mumbled something, and the Sanskrit Buddhist scriptures reverberated in the Earth Dragon King's mouth like an ancient bell. His eyes, which were originally metallic in color, were now filled with Buddhist light. His entire body seemed to be gilded and dyed gold. He was quite similar to the golden Buddha that was worshipped in the temple, but it added to the temperament of the angry-looking Arhat. The third move of the Buddha's palm, Buddha moves the mountains and rivers. Vajra roared and a powerful energy suddenly surged out from his body. The explosion was like a ripple, stirring up thousands of waves, sending dust and sand flying. The players were deafening, and their heads went white. It was one thing for the gorilla, whose entire body was made of metal, to be wearing a tactical eyepiece in one eye, but the ability it used was actually the Buddha's palm. For a moment, the players were in a mess. They didn't know whether this King Kong was an esper or a pugilist. Link watched the waves of explosions caused by the battle on the surface from above. His lips curled up as he muttered to himself, "I didn't expect King Kong's strength to improve again in just 3 months. What a surprise!" Link had heard King Kong's words clearly from thousands of feet in the air. Link knew that this guy had learned the second form of the Golden Buddha's lamp from the Buddhist scriptures. It took him 3 months to master an epic-level technique, the Buddha's palm, all thanks to Vajra's Buddhist enhancement talent. This speed was already shocking to Link. However, he didn't expect Vajra's comprehension to be even greater than he had imagined. He had actually secretly learned the third move. Since he had used this move, the Earth Dragon King had no reason to live. Thus, Link chose this moment to jump down from the helicopter and clean up the mess. Compared to King Kong, who was several times larger after absorbing the metal, Link's figure wasn't too attractive. In addition, everyone's eyes were focused on the center of the explosion. No one paid attention to the sky. Chapter 355 Trying to Synthesize the Earth Dragon King, October 13th. Netherworld swallowed his saliva and elbowed Star Constellation. Can you sense the situation inside? As Constellation was an astrologer, her perception was stronger than the mutated humans. But this time, she didn't get the answer she wanted. Star Constellation's expression was solemn. She shook her head helplessly and said, "There's still the residual power of the Buddha voice in the dust. This field has its own shielding effect, and I can't sense the situation inside. Then we can only wait for the dust to settle." Huang Chuanqing sighed. Although I've seen King Kong's face a few times before, the impression it gave me was that he was a gentle and elegant scholar who liked Buddhism. I couldn't tell that this guy was so strong. What Yomi said was the truth. The majestic Buddha's palm just now had already made people lose the will to confront it head-on. Ever since King Kong descended from the sky, everyone's focus had been on him. He was actually evenly matched with the Earth Dragon King, who wreaked havoc in the Gobi Desert and no one could control him. This really shocked everyone. The several shocking explosions just now caused the gravel and rubble to fall like a storm, and the area where the two were fighting was covered in dust. The dust that was raised was dozens of meters high, like a mushroom cloud caused by a high-yield missile. The center of the battle was shrouded in smoke, as if it was the center of a sandstorm. Star Constellation and Netherworld did not dare to approach. The players were also circling around the periphery like headless flies, but no one dared to enter. At this moment, the sound of the wind suddenly came from the sky. Star Constellation couldn't help but raise her head, and then she saw her boss control the parachute and slowly land. Hula! As soon as Link landed, his parachute was immediately retracted into the storage module of the multi-purpose combat suit. Star Constellation and Yomi looked at each other and knelt down on one knee. "Guildmaster, we failed to stop the Earth Dragon King from wreaking havoc. We have failed to live up to your expectations and are willing to be punished." Link helped the two of them up and smiled. "I sent you two to carry out the first wave of transport so that you could protect this cart of saplings. You did a good job. I can't even thank you enough. How can I punish you?" Lin Ke glanced at the truck that was carrying the sapling. It was parked at the side, completely undamaged. It had not been attacked. Star Constellation and Netherworld were stunned. Although this was indeed the mission their boss had given them, they had to watch as the Earth Dragon King wreaked havoc in the crowd. If King Kong had not arrived in time, they might not have been able to keep the cart of saplings. "But we can't do anything to the Earth Dragon King. If King Kong hadn't come, we wouldn't have been able to keep the saplings." Star Constellation insisted that they failed to complete the mission. This made Link laugh. He patted Constellation on the shoulder and said, "Have you ever thought that King Kong and I appearing here at the right time could be part of the plan?" After the field investigation by the biologists and the evidence of the appearance of the Earth Dragon King, they had a rough idea of the body shape of the Earth Dragon King. "The reason why I sent you two to keep watch is that I hope that you can have a restraining effect when the Earth Dragon King appears, and wait for us to arrive." Link saw Constellation and Yomi's remorseful expressions and decided to goad them into action. "You're all from the Lin family financial group, don't tell me you can't understand this plan." Star Constellation and Yellow Spring smiled awkwardly, not knowing how to respond. The surrounding players noticed Link's sudden appearance beside Constellation and Yomi. Their excited voices were stuck in their throats, but they didn't dare to make a sound, afraid that they would disturb the Earth Dragon King in the dust. Many players saw that Link had relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. They thought that they were safe now. Since Link was here, it meant that the survival test was basically at its final stage. The Earth Dragon King couldn't possibly hurt anyone in front of Link again, could it? Where would they put their face as version children? Wind saw Link and looked like he saw his father's back at the train station. Tears filled his eyes and he rushed to Link like a lightning bolt. The other members of Miracle were the first to react. They followed their guild leader, Wind, and ran over with excitement written all over their faces. After all, it was a blessing to be able to see the version child Link up close. Boss! Link turned to look at Wind and the people from Miracle. Although their hair was messy and their bodies were covered in dust, they didn't seem to be injured. It seemed that the quality and standard of the Miracle Guild's elite members were indeed extraordinary. In this situation, they were able to remain uninjured. This widened the gap between them and the other small guilds and clubs. They were a group of good seedlings to be used as tools, and they must be nurtured well. "Are these your friends from the Blue Planet?" asked Link. Wind didn't expect Link to ask about his guild members. He was stunned for a moment before he quickly responded, "Yes, these are my friends from the Blue Planet." Link nodded his head meaningfully, his tone full of praise. Not bad. These two short words made the Miracle Guild's elite members feel as if they had drunk 8 bottles of Red Bull. Their blood surged through their bodies as if they had received a precious honor and recognition. They had already begun to imagine the future in their minds. Just as the elite members were waiting for Link to accept them into the Lin Financial Group, Link had nothing else to say. The players standing in the distance looked at Miracle's members with envy. It was because of Link's help that Wind Chaser, drifting, had climbed onto the chariot during the closed beta testing that she had gained her current status. For a player to be able to speak to a leader-level NPC, who was also known as the version child, how much of an advantage did he have? Moreover, the smiles on the Miracle players' faces were most likely due to another mission or reward from Link. Link's eyes swept across the thick smoke in the center of the battlefield, and his brows furrowed. The mushroom cloud of dust was mixed with some poisonous mist, so it was sticky and dissipated very slowly. Link took a step forward and activated the Heaven's Insight. There were several different auras in the smoke of the explosion, which were mixed together like a ball of marshmallow. Link raised his hand and directed the wind towards the smoke. A moment later, the smoke completely disappeared, as if it was an impurity washed away by water. At the center of the battlefield, the Earth Dragon King, who had been insufferably arrogant just now, was on its last breath. It had eaten quite a number of players' mouthparts, and only half of it drooped after being blown up. There were many burn marks all over its body. Yellow pus flowed out of the wound, and the air was filled with a pungent smell. King Kong stood on the side. His metal body became unusually bright because of the fusion of metal and quenching. Under the hot noon sun, the flowing light and overflowing color were extremely dazzling. King Kong regained the feeling of being as calm as water when he was studying Buddhist scriptures. He was completely different from the muscular gorilla who had just shouted and caused explosive damage. Coupled with the fact that he had defeated the Earth Dragon King by himself, the players' eyes were filled with shock, and they suddenly felt like they were masters. Link walked to the Earth Dragon King's side. Looking at its breathtakingly huge body, he finally understood why this thing could threaten the Noxie Divine Tree. With its terrifying size and the ability to burrow into the ground and spew poison, the entire desert was like a playground to the Earth Dragon King. The Earth Dragon King's skin was covered with a lot of hard hair, ranging from half a meter to 1 meter. Link grabbed one of the bristles and pulled it hard. With a crack, the bristle broke, making a sound similar to the cracking of a chitin outer shell. Link glanced at the Earth Dragon King and saw its current attributes. Name: Earth Dragon King. Race: Annelids. Level: Level 45+, Leader. Identity: Lord of the Earth Dragon. HP: 677/10,000. Skills: Poison Breath, Sharp Teeth, Spirit Shriek, Burrow, Summon Earth Dragon, Crush Crickets. Status: Dying. A level 45 plus leader boss had 10,000 HP. Looking at the size of the Earth Dragon King and the names of these skills, one could tell how powerful they were. Link reached out to touch the Earth Dragon King's skin. It looked like the soft walls of an annexing creature, but he could still feel a thick layer of scabs on it. Link then entered the system synthesis interface. He could not wait to see the synthesis conditions for the Earth Dragon King. Earth Dragon King plus Misfortune Bullet equals compatibility, 33%. Bone synthesis will consume 7,000 health points. Do you wish to synthesize? Yes/no. Incubation time of the blood cocoon, 15 days. Link's heart sank when he saw the amount of health points consumed by the synthesis. Although he currently had 7930 health points, which was more than enough for this synthesis, the Bullet of Misfortune was only a normal synthetic material. If he chose the most suitable high-grade synthetic material, the amount of health points he would have to consume would only be higher. Link's current 7,930 HP was clearly insufficient. Fortunately, he still had a lot of experience points left in the experience pool. He could solve this problem by leveling up. The biggest difference between the leader mode and the elite mode was that there would be additional HP rewards after leveling up. For every level up, HP would increase by 100 points and energy by 20 points. Lin Kuei could totally make up for the lack of HP by leveling up. Just as Link was focused on the synthesis, Star Constellation and Netherworld, who were behind him, asked, "Guildmaster, what should we do with the Earth Dragon King's corpse?" "This Dragon King is barely breathing," said Link, glancing at it. "It's not dead yet." Star Constellation and Yellow Spring's expressions suddenly changed, and the vigilance in their eyes became even stronger. "President, a centipede dies but never falls down. This Earth Dragon King still has a breath of life left, and it might burst out and hurt people. Please, President, please step back." Star Constellation and Netherworld had experienced the terror of the Earth Dragon King. If it suddenly spewed out a mouthful of poisonous fog at such a close distance, it was very likely to cause heavy casualties. Although the President's strength was unfathomable, his every move now could affect Sand City, and even the Freedom Federation. Any accident that happened would cause an earthquake-like impact. The Earth Dragon King's body was terrifying, and even though it was on its last breath, it still gave people a strong sense of fear. However, with the Earth Dragon King's current HP, Link could kill it with a single punch, so there was no need for it to hurt anyone. However, as the President, Link still followed her advice and turned to walk back. "Star Constellation, you can take care of the Earth Dragon King's matter later. When I took the plane out of Howl Castle, the city's transport team also set off at the same time. I believe the crane and heavy truck are already on their way. Later, you will watch them load the Earth Dragon King and send it to Wind Howl Castle. As for Yomi, you can now gather the mutants and clean up the battlefield. Prepare to set off again." Link casually assigned tasks to the two of them. Coincidentally, the Black Falcon helicopter had also found a flat area to land and was waiting for Link to board. Link stopped after 2 steps and said to Constellation, "If you're afraid that the Earth Dragon King will get violent and hurt people during the transportation process, now is the best time to use a seal on it." The 7-meter-tall King Kong walked to Xing Xiu's side and said, "I also need to trouble you with something. I hope this piece of metal can be transported to Wind Howl Castle together." "Thank you." King Kong's body shrunk at a speed visible to the naked eye and returned to his previous size. A piece of metal cube appeared in front of him. The Black Hawk helicopter slowly took off, and the buzzing sound of the propeller quickly disappeared over the gobi. Star Constellation looked at the helicopter flying away and couldn't help but sigh. It seems that the guild leader has indeed come up with a plan. The moment they sense the Earth Dragon King, they will start to act. He finally believed that everything was going according to Link's plan. Star Constellation looked at the huge Earth Dragon King and did not dare to delay any further. She immediately stepped forward to cast the seal. Hades called Wind to help her gather the Inhumans, clean up the battlefield, and rescue the contents of the truck that was destroyed by the Earth Dragon King. Zui Feng bared his teeth and laughed happily. The sudden appearance of the Earth Dragon King not only allowed them to train their troops, but they also received double rewards without any losses. And because he was one of them, he even received a mission from Yomi to clean up the battlefield, earning him another wave of money. According to King Gozheng, the Miracle Guild would probably be the biggest winner in this wave of quests. Unbeknownst to them, Link had already returned to the basement of Wind Howl Castle and was busy selecting suitable materials for the Earth Dragon King. The Earth Dragon King was a level 45+ leader, with high HP and a huge body. This type of biological synthesis definitely required the best materials. The Earth Dragon King was now considered one of the super creatures on Wasteland Planet, and there were only a few natural creatures that could fight it. After Link's synthesis, the Earth Dragon King could very well become one of the strongest creatures on the Wasteland Star. After confirming that the Earth Dragon King boss could indeed be synthesized, Link's imagination seemed to have grown wings, and he began to imagine all kinds of things. Link glanced at the shelves in the basement. The first row was filled with purple materials, which were Dragon Blood, Elementium Ore, Wind Heart Fragment, Magic Grass, Bloodstone, Reckless Crystal, Shadow Fragment, and Storm Scale. The blue materials on the second row included Mithril Bars, Fire Elemental Particles, Blood of Magic, Magic-infused Silk Cloth, Strong Nerve Poison, and Pharaoh Scepter. The third row was filled with green materials, Genetic Mutation Potions, Death God Anubis's Statue, Painter's Pencil, High Concentration Liquid Bomb, and Paralyzing Agent. The materials needed to be combined with the Earth Dragon King would have to be chosen from these. Link crossed his hands in front of his chest and tapped his index finger on his shoulder in thought. P.S. No more tonight. Good night, everyone. Chapter 356 A Strange Synthesis Formula. Link had been in the game for half a year now. He wasn't completely familiar with synthesis, but he had mastered it. Since the main character of the fusion was the Earth Dragon King, the Dragon Blood would definitely have a place. Link's current synthesis formulas only consisted of two modes, material and creature, or material and creature. The quality of the synthetic material and the strength level of the creature would affect the final result of the synthetic creature. The Earth Dragon King was unlike the other ordinary creatures that Link had created before. It was an extremely rare commander tier boss and was likely to be the only Earth Dragon King on the Wasteland Planet. Thus, he needed the most suitable and high-end materials to create it because it could be the highest level pet Link could create on the Wasteland Planet. Although Link knew many powerful commander tier monsters on the Wasteland Planet, they were already difficult to deal with, let alone capture and synthesize them. Their bodies were even bigger than the Earth Dragon King and required more HP. In version 1.0, the upper limit was level 60, and neither players nor NPCs could break through this level. Only after version 2.0 was officially released would the level cap be increased from level 60 to level 80. In other words, even if Link successfully captured it, he might not have enough HP to synthesize it. Since he had decided on the Dragon's Blood, he had a lot of choices for the remaining materials. For example, adding an Elementium ore. Link thought of a certain large-jawed creature. With the addition of the storm scales, Link thought of the evil dragon who lived in the castle and valued money as much as his life. There were also fire elemental particles and mana blood, both of which seemed to be material elements that could be synthesized. Of course, Link still had to wait until the Earth Dragon King arrived to try them out. After all, apart from choosing the materials, compatibility was also a key point. No matter how high-end the material was, the compatibility rate was not high, and the characteristics of the creature and the material could not be fully displayed. However, Link didn't wait long. Star Constellation and Netherworld's efficiency was trustworthy. Netherworld led the players to the construction site of Shenmue City. The druids, who had been waiting there for a long time, received saplings and resources, and immediately began building Shenmue City. The druid players and the delivery players met and received a new construction mission. The players were especially shocked when they saw that the druids were using saplings to create houses. If I had known earlier, I would have chosen the druid profession. As long as I have a sapling, I can get a 3-bedroom and 1 living room job. If I enter the real estate market, I'll be a real estate tycoon in no time. The normal players also received the construction of Shenmue City mission as a follow-up mission after the delivery. The core of the entire mission chain was contribution points. The more contribution points he obtained, the more prize money he would be able to split from the prize pool after the construction of the Divine Wood City was completed. However, when the players saw the words "Where the leaves dance, the will to fight will grow" in the quest description of Construct Shenmue Town, and that the main building material of Shenmue Town was trees, the players affectionately called the place Wood Leaves. Just as the players were working hard to build the wooden leaf, heavy trucks and cranes worked together to unload the dying Earth Dragon King in the garden of Howling Heights Castle. Looking at it from the balcony on the 2nd floor, the Earth Dragon King was like a gluttonous snake that was lying in the garden, its body curled up. "President, the Earth Dragon King has arrived safely. I've already sealed its body. If you want to remove the seal, you only need to remove the 3 talismans from the top, middle, and bottom of the head." After explaining the method to break the seal to Link, Star Constellation said, "President, I'll be going to Shenmue City to help out. If there's any mission or place that requires my help, President, you can just ask and I'll rush over immediately." This kind of underling was not bad. He didn't even need to say anything. He could tell that Link wanted to be alone. He might be interested in the Earth Dragon King. They didn't need Link to arrange an explanation. They could find something on their own. This was what they saw. After Constellation left, Link immediately took all kinds of materials to the Earth Dragon King to try. The first was the dragon blood. The compatibility between the Earth Dragon King and dragon blood was as high as 90%. This step alone confirmed Link's previous guess. However, after adding dragon's blood, the synthesis required 8,500 HP instead of 7,000. The synthesis time also increased from 15 days to 20 days. Dragon blood is the core material. I'll have to try the other materials one by one. Since it was a level 45 plus leader level boss, 2 materials had to be used for the synthesis. The synthesized Earth Dragon King's strength would be stronger and have a qualitative leap. The next step was to test the compatibility of the second element. Link tried all the materials, and the final material was beyond his expectations. At first, Link thought that the most suitable materials would be the Elementium ore, Wind Heart Fragment, Storm Scale, or the Mana Blood and Fire Elemental Particles. However, after adding these materials into the formula, the compatibility was generally low, no more than 70%. To Link's surprise, there was one material that had a 99% compatibility with the Dragon Blood and the Earth Dragon King. This material was Shadow Fragment. This left Link scratching his head in confusion. I can understand the Elementium ore, the fragment of the Heart of the Wind, the Scale of the Storm, and even the magic-infused silk cloth. But can the Shadow Fragment and Dragon's Blood be combined into an explanation? Link asked doubtfully. Earth Dragon King plus Dragon Blood, purple, plus Shadow Fragment, purple, equals? Compatibility 99%. However, when Lin Ke saw the amount of health points required for synthesis, he was still shocked by the zeros behind the number, even though he had already mentally prepared himself. Bone synthesis will consume 10,000 health points. Do you wish to synthesize? Yes/no. Incubation time of the blood cocoon, 25 days. 10,000 health points. Link only had 7,930 HP left, so he still needed 2070 more. It seemed like the difference was huge, but with the leader template, this difference could be made up in minutes. The superior potential specialty gave Link an additional 100 health points and 20 energy points for every level he gained. Link was currently level 45. If he reached level 60, he would be able to gain an additional 1500 health points and 300 energy points. As for the rest, Link still had 115 potential growth value points to make up for the difference. All in all, Link didn't even need to level up to level 60 to meet the 10,000 HP requirement. Link thought for a moment and decided to level up to 55 first. After all, the open beta plot had just begun, and they might encounter difficulties in future battles. If he leveled up to level 60 in one go, he would not be able to use the health regeneration technique during the entire version 1.0. Link would definitely not block his way out. He would level up to level 55 first, and then use his potential points to solve the remaining problems. LV45 level 55 requires 1448900 experience points. Do you want to level up? Yes/no. Link had 4000,000 experience points. If he could solve the problem with 1450000 experience points, it was nothing. Without hesitation, he chose to level up and Link immediately reached level 55. Excellent potential provided 1000 health points and 200 energy points. The upgrade also increased 30 potential growth value. Other than that, the system also popped up a lot of notifications. You have met the conditions to trigger the profession mission. Wealth of knowledge. Please return to the library of Shadow City to look for a profession mentor and listen to instructions for the next mission. Link was not in a hurry. With his financial support, the city library would be closed for a month for renovation. It would not be too late to find a job mentor after the library was open. Link now had 8930 health points, only 1070 points away from 10,000. However, he could not use up all 10,000 of his health points in synthesis, so he used 108 potential points to make up 1080. When Lin K's HP reached 10,010 points, he could not wait to start the synthesis. The dragon blood and shadow fragments were absorbed by the palm, and the other palm began to bleed, climbing up the Earth Dragon King's body. Throughout the entire process, the Earth Dragon King still tried to resist, but it was in a state of near death, and half of its mouth part had been blown up by King Kong's Buddha moving mountains and rivers. It had completely lost its ability to resist, and in the end, it could only be completely wrapped up by the blood cocoon. When the blood cocoon was complete, Link's face was pale. He staggered a few steps and quickly sat down on the chair. Link's legs went weak after he used up 10,000 HP in one go. After sitting down, he picked up the moonwell water beside him and gulped it down to recover his blood as soon as possible. As Link had absolute control over the divine tree of Noxie, all the moonwell water produced belonged to him. After drinking 500 milliliters of moonwell water, Link's blood had recovered by half. He finally felt at ease. Link returned to the second floor. He stood on the balcony and looked at the huge blood cocoon in the back garden. It took up almost half of the garden. The huge object wrapped in the bright red blood cocoon gave off a strong and flirtatious feeling. Link's heart was burning. He wished that 25 days would pass by in the blink of an eye so that he could see the Earth Dragon King's condition after the fusion. The synthesis this time could be said to be extremely luxurious. The Earth Dragon King was a level 45 leader boss, and its dragon blood and shadow shard were both purple epic materials. The combination of the three had a compatibility of up to 99%. It could be said that the synthesized creature could perfectly display the characteristics of the Earth Dragon King and the two epic materials. With this compatibility rate, the pet that was synthesized must be an epic quality pet, and it was very likely to be dark purple. If the compatibility rate was over 100%, then there was a possibility of getting an orange pet. However, Link knew that it was not so easy to create a legendary grade potion. However, if he could synthesize a dark purple pet, he would have the potential to evolve to the orange stage. This had already been verified by King Kong. At first, Vajra only used the steel heaven collapsing fist, but on the basis of Buddhism, it evolved into the Vajra palm with great strength, and now the 3 moves of the Buddha's palm. Every pet had its own habits and hobbies. As long as one could find the corresponding method, one could find the path to pet evolution. To be honest, Link was curious as well. What kind of epic pet would he get if he fused dragon blood and shadow shards with the Earth Dragon King? However, there was no point in panicking. He would only get an answer after 25 days. Link returned to his room and focused on his plan again. Capturing the Earth Dragon King was only a small interlude in his plan. Now that the desert Earth Dragon that had been wreaking havoc in the Gobi for many years had been eliminated, the wild beast problem in the Gobi had also entered the final stage. He believed that he would be able to see results in the next few days. The problem that had troubled the people and merchants of the Sand Capital for decades was easily resolved by Link. Next, the construction of the transportation line between Shandu and Weeping Valley could officially begin. Lin Ke looked at the huge map on the wall. The construction of the front line and facilities in the Weeping Valley was being carried out day by day. With the participation of the players, the construction speed was surprisingly fast. Soon, a steel defense line would be set up in the south of the Sand Capital. As the players' levels in the Sand Capital gradually increased, it was time to issue strategic missions, allowing the players to enter the Gobi and Gale Desert to fight with the zealots of the Machinery Faith and even the mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang. 2 days later, the Druid apprentices, apprentice Druids, elites, and elders selected by the Moon Shadow Council all arrived at the Divine Tree Noxie. In addition, Fu had been busy transporting souls through the Vulture Palace, so a group of Druid sages' souls had gathered under the Noxie Divine Tree. President, the construction on the surface of Shenmue City is already 60% complete. Should we start the plan for the Military Intelligence Division underground? Xing Xiu asked. The construction of Shenmue City was extremely fast. The Druid NPCs were in charge of building houses and growing trees during the day, while the players from the Sand City were in charge of moving supplies, placing them, and moving heavy objects. At night, the Druid players would work with the normal players. Shenmue City was under construction 24 hours a day. In the castle, Link could see the changes in the distant city every day. Soon, under the condition that the progress of the ground facilities was guaranteed, Xingziu reported the situation and asked if the plan could be implemented by the Military Intelligence Department in Shandu. Hearing this, Link's lips curled up. He smiled faintly and said, "Actually, the underground construction has been completed. Now, all that's left is to connect water and electricity, renovate the place, and transport the equipment. That's all." Xingziu was stunned. The Military Intelligence Department plan in Shandu had already been activated, and the underground construction had been completed? When did this happen? Why didn't he know about it? Furthermore, as the chief engineer of the Divine Wood City, he was basically at the construction site to give instructions every day, but he had not seen any movement underground. When you go back later, there will be a secret door on the ground next to the reception area near the center of Shenmue City. You will reach the underground construction area by following the steps. After you see it, you can assign missions to the Inhumans. Star Constellation nodded dumbly. After leaving, she rushed to Shenmue City immediately and found the secret door as Link had said. She saw a well-built underground hall and various office rooms. The construction on the ground only needed the Druids to use natural energy to create it, and then the players would continue to move it. However, underground construction was a big problem from the beginning of digging. To be able to build such a huge underground building without anyone knowing, Star Constellation was completely convinced. What Constellation didn't know was that this was all thanks to Link's Silver Army ants. During the 3 months in Howling Heights, Link had fed the Silver Ant Queen enough metal every day, and the Ant Queen would produce Silver Army ants every day. They would definitely burst out once a month. In the past 3 months, Link had already formed a massive army of silver ants. Since then, the silver ants had been digging out the underground structure bit by bit. Chapter 357 The Return of the Legendary. The Silver Army ants dug underground every day. The plan for the city of Godwood had been in place ever since Link had first arrived at Windhowl Castle. He had also planned to persuade the Shutu military to set up a new department related to the Inhumans. After all, the open beta would start on October 1st, and a large number of players would enter Wasteland Planet. Whether it was social problems or security issues, it would be a difficult matter for the Shandu military. Hence, in the past 3 months, Link's plan was closely linked to each other. He wanted to set up the entire version 1.0 for the Son of God's descent and expand his influence beyond the Sand City. Star Constellation thought carefully about the process of the past 3 months and suddenly started sweating profusely. The back of her clothes was completely soaked. The boss had become a member of the Military Council of Shandu 3 months ago, and the Inhumans had descended at the beginning of October. The establishment of the Military Intelligence Department was also decided by the Military Council after the Inhumans had descended. But for such a large underground structure, the construction period would definitely be months. In other words, the chairman had already thought of these things before the military committee meeting. Terrifying. The guild leader had actually predicted this several months ago. Star Constellation walked through this underground building. The wide terrain and various buildings that had already been built gave Star Constellation a strong sense of familiarity. Soon, Star Constellation thought of something. This was another underground black market. Right now, Star Constellation's heart was trembling. As the first official visitor to the underground world of Shenmue City, Xingziu understood the president's grand dream. He clearly wanted to turn this place into another underground black market. In the middle of this underground black market was the largest building, the Military Intelligence Department of Shudu. After Xingziu joined the Lin's Financial Group, she was aware of the conflict between the Platinum Hotel and the Lin's Financial Group. However, after Link took over, he united his forces and did not do anything to the Platinum Hotel. The Platinum Hotel was also wary of Link's power in the Sand City and did not act rashly. The 3-month highest level wanted order seemed to be a piece of waste paper now. However, Star Constellation knew that Derek and the President were both top assassins. On the surface, it seemed that neither side had made a move and maintained the hard-won peace, but in fact, they were both planning behind the scenes to deal the other a fatal blow. Xingziu's eyes lit up, as if she understood the President's plan. The President often said that the Inhumans were the biggest stars on the stage of Wasteland Planet, and whoever controlled the Inhumans would control the future of the planet. The Military Intelligence Department was obviously an official version of the Platinum Hotel that the President had created using his identity as a member of the military in Shudu. It was used to compete with the Platinum Hotel in Shudu controlled by Derek. Furthermore, Inhumans had an amazing advantage when they carried out all kinds of missions. They were immortal. Even if they failed the mission and were killed, they could revive after 10 minutes and come back again. The pressure they gave off was far stronger than any local killer. Once this force developed, the Platinum Hotel would be like a little brother to the Military Intelligence Department. Looking at the vast underground world, Star Constellation couldn't help but think of a sentence: the war has begun. While Constellation was immersed in her thoughts, Link was still working on his plans in Windhowl Castle. Although he now held most of the power in Shandu, he had only completed 2/7 of the hidden main storyline mission Mandala's Revenge on Wasteland Planet. The remaining 5 big bosses were either in Dragon City or Day, or the leaders of the major forces on Wasteland Planet. In Shandu, Link could slowly climb up and use the information gap to kill Alongso and Moros. However, now, his every move would attract attention. Alongso's death also reminded the other big shots that the security around him had increased greatly. If he wanted to take their lives, a large-scale confrontation was inevitable. Hence, Link had to make the Lin Financial Group bigger and stronger. In order to deal with the difficulties that they would face next. Just as Link was thinking about his next step, the door to his office was suddenly pushed open. Link was instantly filled with killing intent when he entered the castle without any prior notice. However, the next second, the killing intent was blown away by the wind. The wooden door of the office opened, and the visitor walked straight to the reception table, made a cup of black tea, and drank it in one gulp. John put down his cup and stared at Link. "You don't seem surprised to see me here." Link smiled and walked towards John. "At first, there was killing intent, but I thought that my subordinates would not open the door and enter without informing me. If it was an enemy, they would not be able to escape the perception of the silver army ants that covered the entire Howling Castle. And you're the only one who can sneak into Howling Heights without being seen as an enemy by the silver ants." Link sat opposite John and made himself a cup of black tea. He took a sip and said, "Did things go smoothly?" John heaved a long sigh of relief. "It's going quite smoothly. There were no obstacles along the way. I saw that the Noxie divine tree had already taken shape, and the druids had already moved in. Not far from the tree of God, a city has already begun to take shape. I heard that you've spent quite a bit of money to fulfill your promise." "This isn't just for you," said Link, waving his hand. The Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang had been in the Gobi Desert for decades and had always been a major threat to Shandu. If I'm not wrong, they've recruited a group of Inhumans as well. If we don't get rid of them as soon as possible, when they develop, the people of Sand City will definitely be in a terrible situation. Even though Link said that, in John's understanding, it was all too vague. If the Machinery Faith was so easy to get rid of, it would have been wiped out decades ago. When he first came to Shandu 20 years ago, the Machinery Faith had already attacked him. The Machinery Faith brought with them all sorts of unprecedented technology. All sorts of mechas were like heavenly soldiers in the universe, forcing the regular military forces of Shandu to retreat. In the end, the Freedom Federation's Dragon City and Faya were the ones who came to their aid. Together with the various forces in the Sand Capital, they finally worked together to kill the Machinery Faith back into the Gobi. Back then, the Platinum Hotel in Shandu was also one of the participating forces, and John had experienced it himself. Now that 20 years had passed, although the military power of Shandu had improved, the extent was definitely not comparable to the Machinery Faith. It was already a miracle that they managed to find a way to wake Masha up. Link was actually thinking of continuing to attack the Machinery Faith. This was too unrealistic. Link Dan was right about one thing. After so many years of development, the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang had accumulated more and more power. If they did not make a move, the other side would try to attack sooner or later. But don't worry, the Sand City will only attack the Machinery Faith after Masha awakens. This is my business, and it has nothing to do with you. When the time comes, you can just take Masha far away and live a good life." John frowned slightly when he heard this. He picked up the teacup and looked at the black tea in the teapot. Had Link been drinking green tea every day while I was away? Why did he speak with a strong green tea flavor? "Don't worry. As long as Masha can be revived, I will help you deal with the Machinery Faith." After John finished speaking, he put down his teacup and leaned forward slightly. "It's already the middle of October. When do you plan to make your move?" Link stood up and walked to the window. Looking at the slightly yellowed leaves in the garden, he sighed. The leaves have already turned yellow, and winter is not far away. During the winter, the city's daily energy consumption would increase in order to maintain a suitable temperature for the brain in the vat. The energy allocated to the combat state would be reduced. If we attack now, the resistance and danger we face will be reduced by about 10%. Link looked out of the window with his back to John. He continued, "And in half a month, the Divinewood City will be fully operational. The Shandu Military Intelligence Division under Shenmue City would also be put into use. Powerful Inhumans could come here to take on missions issued by the military, and the contribution points they earned could be exchanged for all sorts of resources, information, weapons, and even military ranks. We'll give the Inhumans half a month to get used to it. In the middle of November, we'll sneak into the city and use Project Eternal Life to wake Marcia up." When John heard this, he was overwhelmed with emotions. At the same time, a shocked expression appeared on his face. "You set up this military intelligence division in Shandu to fight against the Platinum Hotel?" John was the founding elder of the Platinum Hotel in Shandu, so he was very familiar with the rules and history of the Platinum Hotel. The military intelligence division that Link had mentioned was a replica of the Platinum Hotel. The only difference was that the military intelligence department was a department of the Shandu military. It was officially endorsed and was an organization under the sun. With John's acute senses, he could already imagine the scene of an endless stream of natives and Inhumans coming to hand over their missions after the military intelligence division opened. "You're completely trying to kill everyone. Once the military intelligence department is opened, assassins, bounty hunters, the military, and Inhumans will all swarm in, and the Platinum Hotel will not have any new blood to supply. You're forcing the Platinum Hotel into a dead end. Aren't you afraid that they'll take you down with them? Is there any punishment more severe than the highest level wanted order?" Link chuckled. John was silent. Back then, he was tired of fighting and killing and wanted to retire. However, he was asked by the Platinum Hotel to complete one last mission before he could cut off all ties with the Platinum Hotel. The last mission that John received was to kill the illegitimate child of the Supreme Commander of Fae, Augustine Frank, who was still in his infancy. He was to frame the child for Dragon City and cause internal division within the Freedom Federation. Although John was the Platinum Hotel's most legendary and top assassin, he couldn't do it to a child in swaddling clothes. Hence, John rejected the mission, but he received the highest level wanted order and was hunted down by the Platinum Hotel. During their escape, Moros gave them some help and received a promise from John. John and his wife fled back to a small island in the countryside and hid their names. After the fruitless search of Platinum Hotel, they did not send any more assassins. 5 years ago, the news that John was on Watch Island was accidentally leaked, and all the rookies in the assassin world came to John, wanting to challenge him to gain fame. Just as he was sparring with the rising stars from all over the world, someone who was not convinced of his defeat sneaked into John's house and killed John's wife, Masha. In a fit of rage, John annihilated all the assassins who had come to challenge him, shocking the entire wasteland planet. The dark cloud of the number one assassin once again enveloped the entire wasteland planet after a few years. Only the killers who had challenged each other the day before had escaped by boat after failing the challenge. Among them were the top 2 killers on the list, the Shining and the Nightmare. Since then, John had disappeared with his dead wife, and no one could find any news about them. Recalling the past, John's eyes changed several times, and finally, he said, "The highest level wanted order might not mean anything to you, but it will bring bad luck to the people around you." John's words made Link fall silent for a moment. Finally, he looked at the giant blood cocoon waiting to hatch in the garden and said firmly, "Rather than being worried about being retaliated against, it's better to strike first." Looking at Link's determined back, John suddenly felt like he was looking at his younger self. But this time, he had an indescribable feeling that Link might really be able to do it. For the next few days, John stayed in the Howling Castle. His daily job was to wipe his wife's body and massage her muscles in preparation for her awakening. Other than that, John and Link trained every day. John was surprised to find that Link hadn't slacked off in his training while he was gone. Link's strength had improved. She had to use 70–80% of her power to resist Link's stormy and varied attacks. Of course, this was only the result of the two of them sparring and did not represent their true strength. John's specialty was his top-notch infiltration and assassination abilities at night. But Link's character was. He had a variety of skills, a pet army, and money. If they really pulled out their formation and used their advantage, it was really hard to say who would win or lose. "I've been practicing for 3 days. Now, can you tell me how to break the shackles of the realm and reach a higher level?" Link asked as he wiped his sweat. John panted heavily and stared at Link. Do you know when I made the breakthrough? Link shook his head. John had never mentioned this before. Moreover, Link thought that John had created this character at the legendary level from the moment the artificial intelligence system created him. 5 years ago, I killed more than 100 top or famous assassins in the Battle of Overwatch Island. I also learned the legendary skill Mirror Man while fighting with assassins of different styles. After I settled Marcia's matter, I found that I had broken through my previous shackles and reached a new realm. As soon as John finished speaking, a system notification appeared. You have triggered the mission I am a legend, accept/reject. Mission hint, you have learned the method to advance to the legendary stage from John. Please kill 5 commander-level NPCs no lower than level 50 and create a legendary skill. Mission reward, Legendary Mode, Legendary Random Reward X1. Link was dazed after reading the mission. The mission hint was short, but Link knew that it would be extremely difficult. Chapter 358 Everything is ready, only the east wind is lacking, October 15th. Link had already experienced the difficulty of advancing to Commander tier. The difficulty of advancing to Legend was only high, not low. The Legendary level was the existence with the third highest potential in the entire Destiny game. There were generally about 3 legendary NPCs on each novice planet, and they were the core existences that pushed forward the plot of the first 2 versions. In the early versions 1.0 to 2.0, the legendary level NPCs were the strongest NPCs that the players could come into contact with. In version 3.0, Doomsday Echo, the players would come into contact with transcendent level NPCs that were even stronger than the legendary level NPCs. These NPCs were existences whose individual strength could influence several star systems. And above the transcendent level was the peak of Fate, the Calamity grade. In Link's 6 years of playing the game, he had only seen one Calamity grade NPC. It was the final boss in version 6.0 Heart of the Swarm, Emperor Paul. He had complete control over the Zergs in the universe, and he could have a major impact on the structure of the entire universe with just a raise of his hand. Link pulled his attention back from his memories and continued to read the mission. It would be quite difficult to have 5 leader NPCs that were not lower than level 50. One had to know that all NPCs who could become leaders were all famous people, and they basically controlled a force. To kill 5, he would have to offend 5 forces. The thing that gave Link the biggest headache was that he could not rush this matter. When he was dealing with Alongso and Moros, they were only level 45 leader NPCs. If he wanted to kill the level 50 NPC leader, he would have to feed these people for a while. However, as the players settled down on Wasteland Planet, these organizations would start recruiting players on a large scale. This would only make it difficult for Link to kill them. John's lips curled up into a smile and he teased, "Do you think it's difficult? This kind of thing is often a monastic robe that emphasizes luck." Link didn't give John a chance to show off. "I used half a year to climb from a slave to this position. Don't worry, you'll definitely see me become a legend in your lifetime." After living with John for a few days, Link could already grasp the guy's sore spot. This sentence directly broke John's defense. It had taken John 15 years to become a legendary figure after being transferred to the Sand Capital to build the Sand Capital Platinum Hotel with Derek. On the other hand, Link had only taken half a year to become the new king of the Sand Capital from a slave. John still remembered the first time he noticed this guy. It was at the Jack Gang's lair, when this kid wiped out the entire Jack Gang alone. At that time, Link was extremely weak, but John had already seen many shining points and special abilities in him. He didn't expect that in half a year's time, this guy had grown to the point where he had to use 70% to 80% of his strength to suppress it. The speed was so fast that it left people speechless. Perhaps this guy could really create a miracle and become the youngest legend on Wasteland Planet. Just as the two of them were chatting, a melodious howl of a wolf came from outside the whistling castle. Link's eyes brightened. He climbed up the walls of the castle and saw the dark desert in the distance. In front of the black pack of wolves, there was a huge and strong wasteland wolf. This was the leader of the wolf pack. Noxie the divine tree, as well as the players who were building the city, all heard the loud howl. The druids all ran to the edge of the valley and saw the huge number of wild wolves in the gobi not far away. Their faces instantly turned pale. A wolf pack of this scale was unprecedented in all of the druids' experiences. Why are there so many wild wolves gathered here? Are they preparing to attack Weeping Valley? Quick, inform the elders of this matter. Even the elite druids had never experienced such a thing before, let alone the apprentices. Only a few more experienced druid sages stroked their beards and said, "A gathering of wolves of this scale is clearly a beast tide." Hearing the word beast tide, all the druids' expressions changed. Even though they had never seen a beast tide before, they had heard of its name. The Dragon City of the Freedom Federation had been ravaged by the beast tide. It was said that the beast tide that occurred once every 5 years would cause the border of Dragon City to be filled with blood. The strengthened beasts would attack the Great Steel Wall time and time again. The soldiers of Dragon City would use their own bodies to stop these beasts that were wreaking havoc on the wasteland planet. After every battle, Dragon City would engrave the names of the soldiers who died on the Great Wall. It was said that the Great Wall at the border was tens of kilometers long, and there was almost no place for them to engrave their names. Just this alone showed how terrifying the beast tide was. Now, looking at the dense pack of wolves in the desert, these druids knew that they might have to experience a beast tide for themselves. As for who would survive after the beast tide, it was all up to fate. As for the players who were building in Azurewood City, when they heard the wolf howls, they put down their work and gathered at the city's high ground to look. The next second, the player who ran to the higher ground was stunned. The players climbed up the construction platform one after another and looked down from the high point. Then, everyone was petrified and unable to move as if they had seen the Medusa's magic eye. "What's going on with guild leader Wanjun?" The Miracle Guild's king of dog leftovers asked in a daze. Wind-chasing wolf looked at the dense pack of wolves and felt a chill down his spine. After a long while, he finally said, "Now, prepare to fight and break out." Wind-chasing wolf had heard about the beast tide, but wasn't this something exclusive to Dragon City? Why did it suddenly appear in the Crying Valley? However, in the current situation, there was Link guarding Wind Howl Castle, and there were many druid NPCs at the Divine Tree of Noxie. Only the city of Godwood, which was under construction, did not have any security forces. It was full of players. On the other hand, the other players' eyes were gradually filled with excitement. "There are so many wolves, how much experience would I get? If I can kill all of them, I'll probably be able to level up more than 10 times. Link will definitely give us a mission. With the mission and the experience gained from killing monsters, woohoo will take off." The players had been going up and down the mountains to build up Shenmue City for the past few days, and they had gained plenty of experience every day. Their average level had already reached level 8. However, the players did not want to just work. They wanted to fight and be passionate. Many players had leveled up to level 8, and some had even leveled up their skills. There was no place to practice in Weeping Valley, and there were no wild beasts either. The players' blades were already hungry and thirsty. Just as the players were excitedly counting their bullets and statuses, they suddenly saw a jeep quickly driving out of Howling Castle, leaving a long trail of dust in the desert. Link was the only one who could make it all the way out of Wind Howl Castle. The players' minds suddenly buzzed and went blank. Was Link really going to face the beast tide alone? A ridiculous thought suddenly appeared in the players' minds. Link was a man with hidden abilities. Last time, he had defeated the Earth Dragon King with just one guerrilla leader. Now that his main body was personally taking action, wouldn't these wild beasts be unable to withstand a single blow from him? How shameless! You're already so strong, but you still want to fight with players for experience. This won't do. If it's Link, these beasts won't be enough. We'll be reduced to spectators again. It should take some time to kill so many wild beasts, right? If we rush over now, we should be able to get some soup to drink. The players chimed in one after another, all of them thinking of drinking the soup behind Link. With Link attracting the enemy's firepower, they could kill to their heart's content at the back. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go! As one of the players shouted, the other players charged out of the city like wild horses. The players of Miracle were also eager to make a move. They all looked at their guild leader, Wind-Chasing Wolf, and waited for his order. Wind-Chasing Wolf was also persuaded by the other players, but he felt that something was wrong. Something's wrong, something's wrong. If this is an attacking wolf pack, then why is the wolf pack in an orderly formation on the Gobi Desert? Since the first howl, the alpha wolf has not made any more sound? This is obviously against common sense. I think there must be something fishy. Wind's words woke up the players from their dreams. The players of Miracle suddenly realized this problem. These wolves all stayed where they were, and did not show any violent emotions. It did not match the scene of the beast tide at all. While the people from the Miracle Guild were still analyzing the situation, Link had already accelerated the jeep and was almost in front of the wasteland wolf. Rib! With the sound of a car drifting and braking, countless stones were thrown into the air. The car stopped steadily in front of the monster horde. Lin K got out of the jeep, and John, who was in the passenger seat, got out as well. The leading wasteland wolf made a gurgling sound as it bared its teeth and walked towards Link. As for the pack of wolves behind the wasteland wolves, some of them had cute and obedient faces, some were at a loss, and the ones at the back had ferocious faces. Their fur and fur color were also extremely messy. The wasteland wolf stuck out its tongue and wagged its tail as it walked to Link's side. It rubbed against Link's body, feeling the aura it had not felt for a long time. The wasteland wolf was almost 2 meters tall and more than 4 meters long. It looked like a giant in front of Link, but it looked extremely intimate as it lay in front of Link, asking for a pat. Link followed the wolf's fur and turned to John. After I planted the seeds of the Noxie Divine Tree, I set up camp in Howl Castle. Considering the threats on the road to Crying Valley and Shadu, I tamed a wild wolf and threw it into the Gobi Desert. John was stunned for a moment. He glanced at the tide-like wolf pack behind the wasteland wolf and was extremely shocked. So, it took 3 months to become the king of the wolves in the desert. Now, it has returned with all its subordinates. Link opened his arms and smiled. That's right, that's it. John's body could not help but tremble. The number of wolves in front of him exceeded 100,000. Such a scale was comparable to an army. Their powerful mobility was even more terrifying than an army. With his status as the new king of Shandu, Link had subtly influenced countless Inhumans to work for him without complaint. He also had the power of the Shandu military and the entire slums of Shandu. Now, he had an extremely powerful wolf army under his control. His power was unprecedented and was even more powerful than the previous supreme leader of Shandu, Alongso, the iron-blooded general. The players who were trying their best to rush to the scene suddenly realized that Link was not fighting with the wolves. Instead, the huge alpha wolf was lying obediently beside Link, enjoying his petting. This scene immediately made the players who came to gain experience split apart. Didn't you say you were going to get some experience? Didn't they say that Link would be the main tank and pull aggro while they were slacking behind him? After half a day of analysis, it turned out that these were all Link's beast army, which made them happy for nothing. Link patted the wolf's head. All right, let's go to the Gobi. Think of a way to drive the other creatures over. As soon as Link finished speaking, the wasteland wolf stood up and howled at the sky. Awoo! A loud and clear wolf howl reverberated in Weeping Valley. The wasteland wolf got up and turned around, revealing its terrifying white teeth. It made a deep giggle sound. Immediately, all the wild wolves were shocked and followed the wasteland wolf into the depths of the Gobi Desert. Boom! As the 100,000 wolves ran, the entire desert was filled with muffled thunder-like sounds, and the ground was shaking. When John saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh. 100,000 wolves, I never thought I would be able to see such a wondrous sight in my life. After he finished, he couldn't help but ask, the wild wolves finally brought the wolf pack back. Why did you let them return to the Gobi and even try to drive other creatures here? Link looked at the dust that filled the desert as the wolves ran. He stared into the distance, trying to catch a glimpse of the wolves' backs through the dust. Since these Inhumans descended, they've mostly been running errands, delivering goods, gathering intelligence, and so on. They have little combat experience. I'm afraid he'll only be a burden if he follows us to the city. I've put in a lot of effort to make them improve. Wasteland wolves and wolf packs can be considered direct descendants, and I can't let the Inhumans and wolf packs kill them, right? That was why they were ordered to drive away some other beasts so that the Inhumans could increase their combat experience. When the Divine Wood City is completed and the Military Intelligence Department is opened, I will start sending them to the Gobi and deserts to begin a direct battle with the machinery faith. John didn't expect Link to be so meticulous. He even included the Inhumans' increase in strength in his plan. He couldn't help but look forward to the trip to Floating Mech City in a month. Right now, everything is ready except for the east wind. I hope this east wind can come faster. The players who were running behind him pouted and cried. Damn, I was too careless. Link had shown off. They became the background. He had once again made a grand show of acting. Meanwhile, the players of Miracle were grinning from ear to ear. At this time, they rejoiced that they didn't rush up with the other players, or they would have made a wasted trip. Right now, they were at the high ground of Shenmue City, and they looked at the players who were caught in a dilemma as if they were looking at fools. The guild leader Wind Chasing Wolf and the core member, King Dog Feed, looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes. The stronger Link was, the more benefits Wind would receive as a follower of the dragon. The more benefits the Miracle Guild would receive. Chapter 359 Shenmue City, home of the Outlanders. The massive beast tide ended in an absurd comedy with a strong start but a weak end. The players were happy and lonely, but they ran away lonely. The construction work of the Divine Wood City had already started to wrap up, and the buildings on the ground were almost completed. The office equipment and equipment had also been moved in, and now they were just short of opening for business. The underground world's Silver Army ants had already completed their space reclamation. The players only needed to reinforce, decorate, and move the equipment to the underground world. The players were naturally calm about the sudden appearance of the underworld. They had been building on the surface for many days, and they did not expect to see such a wonderful scene under the city. He was even more curious about the use of the Divine Wood City. Ever since the Earth Dragon King had been destroyed, the construction of the highway had been in full swing. Construction had started from both Shandu and Weeping Valley, and it was said that it would be open to traffic a few kilometers away. This was good news for the players who were going back and forth between Shandu and Shenmue City. Unsurprisingly, Link was once again on the front page of the Wasteland Forum. The 100,000 wild wolves, especially the grand scene recorded in the screenshots or videos of players, made all the viewers gasp. This level was no less than a beast tide. Now, it was time to add the Lord of the 100,000 Wolves to his numerous titles. There were also players who ridiculed that the god of war of the Sand Capital had returned home and found that the Gobi Desert was completely empty. With a single order, he sent 100,000 wolf cubs to kill, shaking the wolf fur all over the ground. Lin Kei's name once again appeared on Weibo's hot search, triggering another discussion between players and netizens. The wasteland is interesting. The news on other planets can't even compare to the news on the wasteland. And just Lin Kei alone is already a regular on the trending list. Not to mention the 3 major novice planets, even in the wasteland planet, the Federation of Freedom, Dragon City, and Dharma Knight have never been on the hot search. They're showing off all day just by looking at the sand. What's even more shocking is that my friends who entered the game with me, I'm in Dragon City and he's in Sand City, but at the same time, they're already level 9, while I'm still at level 7. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. So Link is really the main character of Wasteland Planet? The players in other places haven't even seen a leader level NPC before, but Link has already led the players to start a construction project. Since the wooden leaf village rose from the ground, something big is bound to happen. No way, no way, no way! Was there really anyone who didn't know that Link was the main character on Wasteland Planet? He's a member of the Military Council, the second in command of the economy, the battalion commander of the Special Forces in Chitu. He's known as Lin Bang Hung, and he has control over 60% of the properties in Chitu. He has the entire power of the slums under his control. He's the elder of the Moon Shadow Council, the owner of the Divine Tree Noxie, the Lord of Shenmue City, the Lord of Howling Castle, and now, the Lord of 100,000 Wild Wolves. Who else is the main character other than him? Anyway, I've decided that there's meat to eat if I follow Link. Although the quests in the mountains and the countryside were boring, the experience points they gave were much higher. Just doing the quests every day gave a lot more experience than his friends in other cities. It was comfortable. I was born by my parents, and I was raised by Link. The netizens and players were also leaving various comments under the hot search. The players of Shandu had become the upper-class people under this Weibo post, enjoying the envy of the players from other regions and planets. Ever since the open beta started, Link had not stopped showing off. Although a group of players had shown off today, they were all sulking at first. All his unhappiness was swept away. I'll be comfortable first. Compared to other planets, it was more comfortable to do missions with Link. Just as the players went offline to browse the forums and Weibo, eat, and go to the toilet, the road connecting Crying Valley and Sand City in the game was finally completed and opened to traffic. Half an hour after the official announcement, countless vehicles filled with resources and people were transported to Shenmue City in a long line. The news that the roads were open to traffic soon reached Shenmue City, and the players in the city were also jubilant. This was because once it was open to traffic, it would mean that the construction of the Divine Wood City was nearing its end. As long as the mission was over, they would be able to split the prize money in the prize pool. It had been more than 10 days since the game was released. As the players' level and strength increased, the difficulty of the missions and rewards they received gradually increased. The exchange rate of gold in the bank's exchange system also decreased slightly every day. The score had dropped from 2:1 to 1.9:1. This reduction shocked all the players. There were more than 1 million players on Wasteland Planet, and the amount of gold coins earned from killing monsters every day was huge. However, the system had various recycling channels, so the players were still in a situation where they had a high demand for gold coins. Even a portion of the gold coins generated by the gold farming studios had to be used to improve the equipment of the gold farming players and maintain the operations of the game characters. Brother Sing, do you have any missions today? There was no one else who could talk to Star Constellation like this except Wind. After all, he was an elder of the Link Gang and a member of the Lin Financial Group. Star Constellation's attitude towards Wind was completely different from the other Inhumans. He obviously treated Wind as one of them. Wind also used this relationship to get many good missions from Star Constellation. Xingziu had just finished reading the documents in her hand. She raised her head and saw Zui Feng, not hiding anything. It's Zui Feng. Today, the construction of the Divine Wood City is over. There are no more missions after that. Zui Feng was stunned when he heard this. Does that mean that the construction of the Divine Wood City is complete? Star Constellation nodded and said, the transportation line has been completed. Very soon, the workers will arrive at Shenmue City. The city will be fully operational. In a moment, the guild leader will be coming to Shenmue City to give a completion speech. After Star Constellation finished speaking, she glanced at Zui Feng and suddenly said, I'll give you another task. I'll leave the job of maintaining order and security to you and your friends during the president's speech. When Zui Feng received the mission, he immediately became happy and straightened his back. I promise to complete the mission. Looking at Zuifeng's back as he left in joy, the corner of Star Constellation's mouth couldn't help but rise. The Inhuman's dedication to quests and rewards was even more exaggerated than what the guild leader had said. Originally, the construction of Shenmue City had been estimated to be in the tens of millions by Supervisor Penny, and the completion time had not been so fast. However, the guild leader had decided that there was no room for negotiation for a strategic project. But looking at it now, it had only taken a dozen days for Shenmue City to rise from scratch. The cost of the entire project had dropped from 10 million to several million, a commercial miracle. The president's research on Inhumans was unprecedented, and he had turned these unstable factors into the most favorable executors for the plan. Originally, Star Constellation had been worried that the Inhumans would cause a lot of trouble in Sand City because of their bus characteristics, but the guild leader's dazzling and traceless operation had successfully guided all the players in Sand City to follow his plan. Just this strategy and courage had convinced Star Constellation and shocked her. Now that the Divine Wood City had been completed, the preliminary preparations were in place, and it was time to get to the main topic. Half an hour later, the players who accepted the quest suddenly realized that there were no follow-up quests to do. When he found the supervisor said that there were no new tasks assigned by the higher UPS, and all the projects had been completed. After a while, Constellation, who was in charge of the city, announced a piece of explosive news. The Lin Financial Group's president, Link, would be personally attending the opening ceremony and giving a speech. There was also a mysterious event waiting for everyone. Star Constellation's announcement immediately piqued the players' curiosity and enthusiasm. After working hard for more than 10 days, it was finally time to be rewarded. Moreover, this so-called mysterious event also caused a heated discussion among the players. I know about the completion ceremony. The bonus will definitely be divided according to the amount of contribution. However, I don't know about this mysterious activity. Let's make a blind guess at a lucky draw. As an unlucky person, I'll first wish all of you a 10-year reduction in your lifespans. Don't tell me they're going to give outstanding players an extra reward and a chance to join the Lin Financial Group. I feel that the mysterious event should be related to Shenmue City. There might be a plan for the next stage of the mission. The players were also doing their best to crack the mystery activity, and their brains and chests had lost a lot of weight. Among them, the most popular one was the quota to join the Lin Group. The players were not interested in the vague promise, but they could see the benefits with their own eyes. There were tens of thousands of players building Shenmue City, but only Wind Chaser of the Miracle Guild could enjoy the special treatment of an SVIP. Every time he came to pick up a quest, he would receive the best quest reward. And as long as he showed up, he would never have to line up. This was the privilege of being a member of the Lin Group. Wind Chasing Wolf had been scolded by many players. This B** starred, just because he had managed to cling onto someone's thigh during the closed beta testing, he was acting all high and mighty in Azure Wood City. Even the Miracle Guild's players had indirectly received a lot of care and were given a lot of good missions. Just as the players gathered to discuss, today's main character, Link, finally appeared from Wind Howl Castle. Following that, there were 2 metal boxes, which looked exactly like the boxes in the movies that contained money. The news of the completion of the Godwood City and Link's speech as well as the payment quickly spread to the players outside of the game. Many players took the time to go online and witness this historical moment with their own eyes. When Link arrived at the square in the city, there were already tens of thousands of players gathered there. At a glance, it was a vast expanse of darkness. Link also saw Wind leading the members of the Miracle Guild to maintain order in the crowd. Looking at the energetic players in front of him, Link felt gratified. He smiled like an old farmer who saw his crops growing happily. Link picked up the microphone. Although I'm the one speaking on stage today, you are the ones who are truly worthy of respect. It's you who have worked hard for more than 10 days and nights to build the Godwood City from nothing in the Gobi Desert. Without your hard work, there wouldn't be this city under our feet. Lin Ke praised the players from the start. After these words, many players seemed to have drunk a pound of Urquatu and began to get angry. Her cheeks were red and she was very emotional. Speaking of my contact with the Inhumans, I have to go back to half a year ago. At that time, I was still an unknown small leader in the slums, Ying Luo. Link said as he glanced at Wind. Wind heard Link's speech and suddenly had a bad feeling. Link wasn't going to tell her about that, was he? Zui Feng's heart clenched as he became extremely nervous. His eyes were filled with pleading, "Autumn pear cream, President, don't say it." One day, my subordinate Fu drove out in the morning to help me pick up the newspaper. Fu is the Forbes, as you know, a new driver, the kind that didn't learn from a proper driving school. The gang members dare to teach and the other dare to learn Pixiu. Lin Ke picked up the microphone and started his talk show. The players in the audience were also listening with great interest. They felt that they had gotten closer to Link. They didn't feel that this version sun was so high and mighty anymore. It was like a conversation between friends, like a spring breeze. In the end, this guy drove out in the morning. On the way back, in order to avoid the speeding cars, he drove the car directly onto the crossway and killed Zui Feng, who was about to eat fried chicken. At that time, Fu was also very anxious, so he directly threw Win's body into the trunk and brought it back. In the end, when we were watching, the body suddenly disappeared. Coupled with the strange incident that was published in the tabloids on the street, I only knew about the existence of Inhumans. At that time, the whole of Shandu was in a panic among the Inhumans. They felt that they could not die and could disappear at any time. The Inhumans who spoke nonsense were very terrifying. Inhumans had almost become the target of everyone's ire, and various forces and departments were also studying this new threat day and night. However, in the process of getting along with Zui Feng and Dao Yangren, I could clearly feel the sincerity of these strange people. Even when the Link gang was in a difficult situation, they still stood by their side. That's why I've always had a sincere and favorable impression of Inhumans, Ying Luo. The players finally understood what had happened. So this was the reason why the Lin Financial Group taught the players free skills and even assigned them missions after the open beta when they could not find any missions or job instructors. Many unfamiliar players around Wind also stared at him and laughed. It turned out that Wind Chasing Wolf and Link got together because of an out-of-control car and a flying fried chicken. It was so funny. Also, the fact that the players in Shandu could have quests and class trainers, which widened the level gap between them and the players in other places, was all thanks to the efforts of Wind Chasing Wolf and Bandit Cool people during the closed beta period. At this time, many people looked at Zui Feng with a more pleasant look. At this time, please allow the players to say one thing. Thank you, Zui Feng. Lin Ke's talk show was also coming to an end. He said the most important sentence, as such, Shenmue City was built by the Inhumans themselves. I hope that the Inhumans can treat this place as their home. Link was speaking from the bottom of his heart. After all, only when players treated Mystic Wood City as their home and spent their money there would the city be able to earn more money. Next up is the most important matter regarding the construction of the Divine Wood City. According to what I've said in Sand City, everyone who has participated in the construction of the Divine Wood City will be able to split the 3 million prize pool according to their contribution. Chapter 360 Military Intelligence Division March into the Desert. Due to time constraints, I will now announce the top 10. As for the others who have participated in the construction of the city, they can claim their respective rewards from the city construction administration of the city according to their contributions. Everyone agreed with what Link said. After all, there were tens of thousands of players involved. Even if Link wanted to come out, they would not be happy to hear it. Immediately after, Link began to read out the top 10 people who had contributed to the construction of the city. First, he has worked hard in the construction of the Azure Wood City from the beginning of the transportation of goods. He has gone through many difficulties and dangers. He has sacrificed himself to protect the materials and property, and even thought of sacrificing his life for justice when the Earth Dragon King was wreaking havoc. He's the supervisor of Shenmue City Xingziu, who is in charge of the Lin Financial Group's general operations. As soon as Link said this, all the players were dumbfounded. Their jaws and eyes almost fell to the ground. How did they split the prize pool, and even included the NPCs? This works too? Some players turned around and read the requirements for the distribution of contribution points in detail again. Their faces instantly fell. This was because the quest did not state that this was a quest unique to Inhumans. As long as it was someone who had built Shenmue City, they had the right to be selected. As a result, the Lin Financial Group's staff also joined the competition. The players suddenly felt that this wave of competition was even more intense. Star Constellation stood at the side, her face full of disbelief. Even though he was well versed in astrology, he had never thought that he would be the one who contributed the most to the establishment of the Azurewood Manor. Go up, what are you waiting for? Yomi gave him a push and Constellation came back to her senses. She didn't want to leave Link hanging on the square. President, I'm really not worthy of this first place. Star Constellation said with her head lowered after going on stage. Link patted Constellation's shoulder. According to the contribution data, you're number 1. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you still say something like that, then aren't you calling me blind and incompetent? I'm not, I didn't Chien. Xingziu was anxious when she heard this and quickly tried to explain. But Link didn't give him a chance. He took 3 bundles of money and pushed them into his hand. If you don't have it, then take it well. Star Constellation, who had the highest contribution, directly gave 300,000 wasteland coins. Next up for second place, not only did you guide the Inhumans in the construction of the city, you even used your own camera and words to record the entire process of the city's construction, allowing the citizens of Sand City to clearly know the progress of the city's construction. You also helped to promote the Inhumans' image. The winner is none other than Netherworld. Huang Chuan graciously went on stage to receive the award and brought 200,000 in cash. The players in the audience were on the verge of tears. If the top 10 were all from Lin's financial group, it would be a case of losing the top 10. Next, Link quickly announced the names of the people from 3rd to 10th place. In the top 10, a total of 4 players had received cash rewards. Wind Chaser Pro was ranked 5th, Dog King was 6th, True Prophet Cha Sha was 9th, and Lost Mon was 10th. It was understandable that Wind Chaser and King Gozheng were ranked 5th and 6th. After all, Wind Chaser was an employee of Lin's financial group. He received a lot of preferential treatment when doing missions and many high-contribution missions. As a core member of the Miracle Guild and an important right-hand man of Wind Chaser, King Gozheng had also received a lot of benefits. If there was no doubt that these two were among the top 10, then the 9th-ranked Prophet Cha Sha shocked every player present. This player did not have any background, nor was he a member of a guild or club. He did not have anyone to help him, and he had to carry bricks and complete missions by himself. He used the rest time of others to complete his missions, and he had reached the 9th place on the contribution list with his own strength. All the players below the stage were shocked. True Prophet Cha Sha, please accept my bow. He's a real king. He has no power or influence, but he's relying on his own strength to fight his way to the forefront and win the grand prize. I can only say that it's too awesome. Lucky me, I'm able to kill all of you. The player in 10th place, Lost Mon, had much less discussion than the Prophet. After all, he was also a big shot in the industry. Almost everyone in the game knew him. He was the guild master of one of the top 10 guilds, the Myth Guild, Lost Mon. The first batch of 300 players from the Myth Guild had entered the game, and nearly 30 of them had come to Shandu. Together with the guild leader, they had participated in the mission of going up the mountains and down to the countryside to build Shenmue City. The prize money for the top 10 was not small. Wind Chasing Wolf took 50,000, Dog Feed King took 40,000, Cha Sha True Prophet took 20,000, and Lost Mo Wen took 10,000. Compared to the average player, this was a lot of money. After all, the price of goods in Shandu was not high. A second-hand pistol was only 300 to 400 yuan, and a brand new pistol was 600 to 700 yuan. After a round of quests, the Miracle Guild would probably be the biggest winner. Wind Chaser and King of Dog Leftovers worked together to cut down 90,000 wasteland coins, laying a good foundation for the development of the guild players. After this mission, the Miracle Guild players in Shandu would be far behind the mainstream players in terms of equipment and level. They would become the #1 army in the game. In the previous games, the Miracle Guild could only be considered as one of the top 10 guilds and not one of the strongest guilds. The only thing that people remembered was the 10-year veteran player of the Hall of the Exalted, Wind Chaser. No matter what game he played, he insisted on choosing martial arts. He played the weaker classes to be strong, and played the stronger classes to be at the top, becoming the youth of a generation. But now, everyone could see that Wind Chasing Wolf's good luck and choice during the closed beta period had made it extremely convenient for him to play the game. The guild master of the Myth Guild, Lost Mo Wen, glanced at the smiling Wind Chaser and could not help but sigh, the Miracle Guild is about to rise. The big guilds and clubs collected game coins from the bank exchange system every day, but most of them were small orders. They had to fight with other guilds and tycoons, so although each guild was holding money and waiving bills, the game coins they received from the bank exchange system could only be said to be a drop in the bucket. Now that Miracle had obtained 90,000 wasteland coins, they could greatly improve the equipment of their elite members. Next, as long as they reached level 10, they would be able to start their class change. In addition, they could quickly obtain experience and equipment from dungeons. This elite team would be at the forefront of all players and become the sharp blade for Miracle Guild to compete for various honors in the future. King Gozheng clearly understood this as well, and the corners of his mouth were almost touching his ears. Guild leader, we're rich now. Use this money to arm our elite members, and we'll be able to catch up with the progress of Traveling Dragon. The president of Dragon Travel the World spent $1 million to buy 500,000 wasteland coins on the day the exchange system went online, so the core members were armed to the teeth. A piece of news that was unparalleled in the limelight also made the title of the top 10 guilds in China spread in the new game Fate. Although the 90,000 coins in the Miracle Guild was not as much as the 500,000 coins in the Sky of Dragon's Wrath, their influence and popularity in the game were not far off from the world of Dragon due to their relationship with the guild leader, Wind. He had a strong aura that could charge at the first team. Link put away the list after reading it out. Link wasn't surprised at all by Wind Chaser and King Dogfeed at the top of the list. Link was still a little surprised by Lost Ask, the guild leader of the myth. He remembered that in his previous life, this person had always been developing in Dragon City. He had entered the Great Wall Army of Dragon City through his hard work, and his profession was a martial arts major spearman. The red-tasseled spear danced in a gorgeous and resplendent manner, and he was known as the Spear King. In the first professional league, he had also achieved good results. The Burning Prairie spearmanship had left a deep impression on Link. He directly locked the enemy in the air and used a set of combo moves to make the enemy unable to get down. He created the Spearman Float combo and was also the person who created the unique characteristics of the profession. Now, for some unknown reason, he was born in Shandu and even participated in the construction of Shenmue City. Link glanced at the red-haired Lost Mo Wen in the crowd. Since this guy had also come to the Sand City, he would have to rope him in the future. Such powerful players were never too few or too many. At this time, Star Constellation quickly walked to Link's side and reported in a low voice, "President, the convoy and staff are all in place." Link raised an eyebrow. They'd come just in time for the next segment. Let them enter Shenmue City now. The city will officially open for business. I'll arrange it immediately, Star Constellation nodded. As Constellation left, Link picked up the microphone and said, Xingziu just told me that after the road was opened to traffic, the convoy and staff of Shandu were all in position at the gate of Shenmu City. Now, please welcome our staff to Shenmu City. I hereby announce that the Divine Wood City is officially open to the public. As soon as Link finished speaking, the fireworks exploded into the air, and countless balloons flew up from behind the square platform. The staff and the convoy drove into Shenmu City. These staff members were all recruited by Link in Chitu and had undergone pre-work training. Soon, the staff found their workplace and moved all kinds of office supplies into the store. There were also many shops that had bid in Shadu. Some of the influential families in Shadu's uptown had also opened their businesses in Shenmu City and arranged for people to move in today. In an instant, the entire Divine Wood City was filled with people and it was extremely lively. Seeing the signs of all kinds of shops rise, hotels, food, weapons and equipment stores, hospitals, flea markets, and other industries in demand were all open for business, the players were all excited. The city, which had been deathly silent a moment ago, was now filled with busy figures in the streets and alleys. The convoy in front was made up of various industries and families. The last convoy to enter was a large military truck painted with camouflage. One car after another drove towards the center of Shenmu City. Soldiers jumped down from the trucks and formed several square formations. Behind them were huge black boxes that were transported to the building in the center of Shenmu City by large trucks. It was right next to the central square, and the players could see it. This is the military symbol of Shandu. What is this for? I see the symbols of the Air Force, Ground Force, Special Forces, Shita Special Forces, and Special Operations Battalion. It seems that all the forces of the Shita military have sent people here. Just as the players were dumbfounded, Link stood on the stage and said, other than ordinary businesses, Shenmu City is also an important strategic hub for the Shandu military. It protects Shandu in the north and faces the Gobi Desert in the south. It is the bridgehead against the desert extremists, the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang. Therefore, the military committee decided to set up a military intelligence division in Shandu as the base camp and information distribution center for the resistance against the desert forces. I'm the Supreme Commander of the Military Intelligence Department in Shandu. Link's status was added to the list, the director of the Military Intelligence Division in Chitu. The players were already numb to it. After all, no one knew status better than Link. If an NPC's identity could be displayed above their head, then the name above Link's head would change every day. There would not be a repeat of the same name for a week. Seeing the players' lack of interest, Link couldn't help but drop a bomb. The Military Intelligence Division will be open to all Inhumans, and there will be various missions for everyone to choose from. After completing the mission, one could obtain contribution points from the Shandu military. These contribution points could be exchanged for weapons and equipment, various special items, and even military ranks. Once a person obtained a military rank, he would be a registered and certified soldier of the Shandu military. With the promotion of military rank, you can form your own army and enjoy military rank allowance. Link's words woke up the drowsy players. Almost everyone's eyes lit up. Contribution points could be used to exchange for weapons, equipment, special items, and even military ranks. He thought about how Wind-Chasing Wolf, a small leader of a gang, could have 8 NPCs with him. If he got a military rank, wouldn't he be able to lead an entire army? He had transformed from a lone player to a battalion commander and company commander in the game, and he had to command 100 people in battle. That feeling was so great. Furthermore, the players were worried that they would not have any combat missions. Now that the Military Intelligence Division was established, the missions they would receive would definitely be difficult and exciting. There was a commotion in the crowd. Link saw that everyone from the Miracle Guild was gathered together, beaming with joy. He seemed to have already thought of a mission. On the other side, the members of the Myth Guild were also in an intense discussion. The guild leader Mon had lost his way, and his eyes were burning. It seemed that he had a strong feeling about his military identity. Star Constellation, who was below the stage, was also excited when she saw the restless mutants. As expected of the guild leader, the establishment of a military intelligence division could actually make these Inhumans so excited. Resources, equipment, identity. If he wanted to control the players, he had to focus on these three things. Link's lips curled up. He believed that with the players' heated discussion, the news of the military intelligence department in Shenmue City would soon spread. Many players who had been doing missions in the Sand City would come here and join the military intelligence department's mission segment. Link had only set one focus for the current stage of the military marching into the desert. All the missions that followed were to pave the way for their expedition into the desert. At that time, the machinery faith would be able to experience the horror of the players. Of course, if they thought that this was the only good news from the official production of the city, they would be underestimating Link. Link picked up the microphone again and was ready to announce the second piece of good news. Apart from that, I have good news to tell everyone. P.S. Haha, I forgot to tell everyone. The cover has been changed. The previous one was made by Wanjun backstage herself. It's a little rough, but it's changed to a handsome and sci-fi color.